we are very grateful to have you. This program is about, we want to recharge and run. It's a postgraduate research workshop. So we have seasoned and well-tested experts in their own right who will be engaging with us and sharing their thoughts and their experience with us. And the idea is that it should help us to reorganize, reorient, re-strategize, and then recharge so that we can face 2023 with confidence, with dexterity, with discipline, with determination, and stern pertinacity. And also making sure that we are keeping our mental health in check. We are ensuring that situations do not come too close to us to make us depressed, and that we are dealing with all the anxiety. The postgraduate journey is a very difficult journey, having walked through it myself, and it can be daunting, and sometimes you need a shoulder to lean on. And though you may have your supervisors and your peers and mentors, you also need to know that there is a community here that will actually help you to be able to cross it to the other side. So it is just a platform to tell you that you are not alone, and whatever you are doing, just know that there is somebody who is a guide, who is a cheerleader, and telling you that you can do it. And if people have gone through it, I can assure you that you will also go through it. And if only you pay attention to the little details, you should be able to do that. So once again, I want to thank you all for coming. And Dr. Sabelile, when it is done, just give me a thumbs up, and then I can quickly hand over to you if that is okay. So thank you so much. But I think that a lot of us on this platform, we don't maybe know what Labbing Gate is. So Dr. Abioye, can I suggest that you play the Labbing Gate video so that people know what Labbing Gate is? And it is a platform, it is a virtual online platform that helps connect researchers across the world to a laboratory, especially if you are doing any of your postgraduate studies and then you have any laboratory work you need to do and you don't have that laboratory piece of equipment in your lab. You can log on to Labbing Gate and then we can connect you. This is a brainchild of people who are thinking about Africa, who are thinking about continents that are less endowed, and we've seen how we can create a pool of resources to bring people together. And so I'm well aware that this has been very instrumental, and the Labbing Gate platform is also noted for conducting excellent and high-level conferences, one of which will be happening in this year around sustainable engineering and materials development. So please be looking out for some of these things. And this is also basically a safe space for us to co-create, cross-pollinate ideas in ways that can help us innovate incessantly to solving the socioeconomic challenges we face, no matter where you are and no matter the continent in which you are. So once again, I just want to thank you. And I think Dr. Abioye, can you just play that video for us, and then people can pay attention to it. Thank you so much.
Hello, dear research colleagues. What are the challenges you are facing? Are you a researcher? Are you in need of the nearest laboratory with state-of-art equipment to execute your project? Are you currently planning to contact a laboratory or research host for your research visit or bench work? Are you a laboratory? Are you looking for increased research patronage and visibility of your laboratory? Are you interested in establishing robust research collaboration both locally and internationally? Generate revenues on laboratory equipment and sustainability of equipment maintenance. Are you an equipment manufacturer or buyer? Labbing Gate Incorporated, Canada, is here with an unparalleled solution by introducing Labbing Gate Digitalized Laboratory Innovation, LDLI, a one-stop platform to meet all your research needs. LDLI is a user-friendly platform with a capacity of over 10 million equipment, more than 100,000 laboratories, more than 5 million researchers, offering effective networking across the globe. Execute your related research transactions with ease today by signing up on www.labbinggate.com/register. We look forward to having you on our platform. Labbing Gate, the gateway to world's laboratories.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bioye. So please, if any of us have any questions, we can put it in the message box and then you'll be attended to. And we are also, I think some people have been directed to Google Meet, but just make sure that you send the link to all your colleagues and so that they can join us, because I can tell you from the way I'm very relaxed today, I can tell you that today is going to be a very great one. And so first of all, we just want to call basically the director of Tenza Research Group. He has postgraduates at her heart, and she does everything to make sure that they get the support that they need in order to develop and become whatever they would want to be. And she is a senior lecturer at the Northwest University in Portchester. She did a PhD at WITS in nursing and did some stuff and with WITS School of Public Health. And so please, without further ado, I just want to welcome Dr. Tenza Sabelile to tell us the purpose of this webinar and what we should be expecting. So please, this is the time that you fasten your seatbelt, get some coffee or tea around you if you're in the morning, and then let's do this, because I believe that we are in for a jolly ride, and we are going to use this to set the tone for what is going to happen in the course of the year. So thank you so much, Sabelile, and thanks for coming. Thanks everybody for coming. Over to you, ma'am. Go for it.
Hi, colleagues. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. And
sorry, before you come in, do I have everyone's permission for us to record this? This is a safe space. We also want to keep a record so that we can upload it to our YouTube accounts and all over the place. Thank you so much. So yes, please, can we record this? Dr. Bioye and the technical team, thank you for a fantastic work. Can you hit play? Doc, go for it.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good day, depending on where you are. Thank you very much, colleagues, for being here. I'm Dr. Tenza, and I'm here to welcome you all. A warm welcome to all the postgrad students across the globe, and a special welcome to our esteemed guest speakers. This platform has been set to you today specifically by Tenza Research Hub and Labingate organization that is based in Canada. So ladies and gentlemen, both Tenza Research Hub and Labingate, we have something in common, which is supporting research. Hence today we decided that you guys, we support the postgrad students and get you to be in the right pace for starting this year. So the purpose really is to get you geared up and to make sure that you do the right things from the beginning so that you can finish on time. Tenza Research Hub, we focus on coaching postgrad students. So if you have any of your coaching needs, then you get in touch with us. And Labingate, they provide resources on connecting researchers, laboratories, and industry. And if you need such, you get in touch with them. Please enjoy this. And before I go, I just want to say to you, ask questions. It's a safe space to speak and engage, be present. Okay, thank you. That's it from me.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And Dr. Tenza, can you see my cap? This cap came all the way from Australia. So I'm representing the folks in Australia. Guys, before we bring in the first resource person, I know Miss Amina is here. I just want to say something. It was, I think, one of the richest man on the continent that said, if you are born poor, there is nothing you can do about it because that is not your choice. But if you die poor, that is entirely up to you. We are bringing all these resources to you to make sure that we provide a safe space, the atmosphere for you to be able to do your research and become the Christopher Columbus of your discipline. And now we're going to start first with looking at issues around mental health and postgraduate journey. The fact that we are talking about mental health doesn't mean somebody is insane or the connotations that we actually attribute to things. But for you to be able to drive your mission in life, you first of all need to be well mentally. You first of all need to know how you can navigate issues around anxiety and depression. And you must know when to go ask for help when you need it. Now, Miss Amina, she holds a master's degree in community-based counseling, psychology, and is currently pursuing her PhD in psychology at the University of the Witwatersrand in South Africa. She has clinical experience working with various mental health issues related to mood, anxiety, trauma, personality, providing direct services to individuals, couples, families, and adolescents. She utilizes integrative approach to conceptualizing the individual holistically. I can go on and on and on and on, but we want to hear from the horse's own mouth. So without wasting time, I love that your hairstyle. I always tell you, the one, especially the one at the top here. What is it called? Please, Amina, thank you so much for coming. Please engage with us. Can I also suggest that if you are not talking, can you mute yourself so that we don't have any interferences? So please go for it. You can introduce yourself. I've introduced you, but go ahead and do your thing. What you know how to do best. Go for it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. Sometimes when we put together these profiles and then you hear them and you're just like, no, you know what? It's actually I'm just here. I'm just here, and this is what I'm doing. So yes, I am a psychologist, and I'm also embarking on my PhD. I'm at WITS, and just check time, so I keep time. So I'm currently at WITS, and one of the reasons why I've loved to be able to engage in this process in terms of like the research hub, and I've loved to be able to be part of this, is because in my own journey from honors, so postgraduate honors and masters, and now into PhD, I think I sat with a lot of my own insecurities. So I didn't really think that I was a researcher. I just kind of found myself there, and because research is a component of, let me just get this. Yes, because research is a component of the, the course, you find yourself now stuck with research, So my first question that I'd like to invite us to reflect on, well, a bunch of questions is, are you ready for research, or is research ready for you? So in my journey, like I said, I found research as part of the coursework. So I wanted to become a psychologist, and I wanted to practice psychology, right? But obviously along the way, you have to do your research. In undergrad, you have to do research. In honors, you have to do research. In masters, you have to do research. And I found, like the areas in psychology, in practicing psychology, and professional psychology, I found that some of those areas that I was interested in weren't necessarily what was available for me to actually research. And that obviously brought me like a certain level of anxiety, because this is what I want to be able to embark on. But you find that practically in academia, you don't always get the opportunity to research what you want to research. So some of these questions are just for us from now up until the end of the session today. Just kind of think about how we engage with research. So what does it actually mean to you? What does it mean to you in terms of whatever course or career path that you're embarking on? Because like I'm saying, research will find you whether you want to or not. I recall in my master's, the research component was about 50%, so there's still me trying to get that professional degree. and, you know, all the coursework that you're doing, the practicals and everything, that only covered 50% of your final mark. And then the research component was another 50%. So that was like a very rude awakening, because there you are, who doesn't have a very good relationship with research, struggled a little bit with understanding some of the research methodologies. And here's this big component of me being able to actually get this master's degree, you know. So just for us to be able to think about, you know, when we are in our different spaces and why we're embarking on research, what are we going to do with the research? You know, what is your research identity? You know, how are you positioning yourself when you're doing this research? One of the things that my supervisor said to me in master's, he said, you know, you need to do a study that when you're tired or you're done with research, your interest is going to sustain you. And that was a very important thing, because as I sat down and engaged and I was putting together the proposal, and I was thinking about how I'm going to research, you know, what I was researching, which was violence at that time. I had to think about, okay, so when I'm really tired and when the coursework is too much and there's competing deliverables, how am I actually going to be able to write this research? So this is something that I would encourage all of us to kind of think about and reflect on, even as we are embarking on our journey. And also just the idea that, you know, research doesn't necessarily come easily to all of us, and we find our ways in. And, you know, I love this because you're able to get support. Some of those support you might not necessarily know that you need. So if it isn't exactly, or you're finding that your strengths are not necessarily coming through, or there's areas that you need development, this is the perfect space for you to be able to engage with that, so that the research is not threatening you. I know for me, it was really a threat because of the extent of the demand that research put in my study, and having to kind of sit with and think about, if I'm not able to do this well, what does it eventually mean for me being able to pass this master's? So coming back to mental health. So like I said, I am a psychologist, and some of this will be a reflection of my own journey, but also in terms of some of the things we should consider in terms of mental health in academia. So we know that academia is very much a performance type of society, a community where you do need to do well in order to be able to progress, right? And what we know about performance is that it always has an impact on your abilities, right? It places a demand. So when we think about mental health and why mental health is important, because we're thinking about our state of wellness, so psychological, social, and emotional wellness, and how you're able to understand that in the different phases of your research journey, your postgraduate journey. You know, so when we think about our mental health, we're talking about our thoughts, we're talking about our emotions and our behavior. And it refers to how you're able to look after yourself, whether you're able to realize your potential and your capabilities, also about how you cope with normal life stresses. So normal life stresses are general things, you know, sometimes you can call it adulting, you know, you can call it having to meet deadlines, but whatever it is that can be a normal life stressor, it's not abnormal, right? Your mental health will determine how you're able to cope with those things. Then also in terms of how you interact with other people, and also about making healthy decisions. So I mean, when we think about this in terms of academia, and you know how it's often said that our relationships with our supervisors, there's that thing that our relationships with our supervisors are always very toxic, right? But this is where your mental health comes in. How are you able to develop a healthy relationship with the other? How are you able to prioritize your time? How are you able to understand yourself that you're not coping right now? And how do you then take care of yourself so that you're able to then continue, or when you're realizing that you actually need to be able to stop or pause? So this is where your mental health comes in handy. And this is just the factors that contribute to mental health difficulties. This is just for us to think about ourselves as human beings. So sometimes we think about ourselves as scholars a lot, especially when we're very much engrossed in our research or our academic journey. And we often forget, so it was mentioned before, that you might be presenting or you might be experiencing a mental health difficulty or a mental illness, and how do these ultimately impact your journey as well. So why should you manage your mental health? The same way, the same reason why you manage any other aspect of your health. It's very important. So like I mentioned before, you know, your ability to plan, your ability to have insight and foresight. You know, there's this thing that often happens, you know, when you're burnt out, and I'll just kind of touch on burnout a little bit in the end, is that, you know, when you sit and you're looking at an article and you're reading it and you're looking at the page, 30 minutes passes, you're still looking at the same thing, you know, or else you know that, okay, you know what, if I just dedicate one day and I sit down and I read through, I'll be able to proofread my literature review and I can send it off, and the day starts and the day finishes and you're not getting it done, right? And when you're able to see that you're moving a lot slower than you used to move, then you have to be able to say to yourself that there's something that's happening with me. My mental health may have been impacted, but by whatever reasons, or other things that happen in life, because life happens regardless of whether we're in academia or not, you know, but that's when you have to then say, okay, fine, I need to stop and pause and see what's happening. And kind of understanding and managing your mental health also helps you to predict. So, you know, when you can tell that, you know, I'm not really feeling okay, so maybe I should just park this for a little bit. And a lot of our Black communities, let's just own it. You know, we mock the idea of a gap year because it's like, what do you mean you're going to take a gap year? And ultimately, if you think about what a gap year is, it's an adolescent, normally after like grade 12 or matric. They're saying that, you know what, I've been in school for 12 years and I've had to make big decisions about what course I want to do, what I want to do with my life. I mean, sometimes I barely even know, you know, what I'm going to wear tomorrow, but I need to make these big decisions. And you're finding that sometimes a gap year is really good in terms of being able to kind of sit and pause and think about yourself and understand yourself before rushing into the hustle and bustle of tertiary education, you know? So those are some of the things that we look at and it's like, no, I can't rest, I need to keep going. And we say that to ourselves. And sometimes when your mental health is telling you, or psychologically you're self-aware or you have insight, you can start to tell that you're slipping a little bit. And normally you can prevent the ultimate or the consequential mental health challenges if you're seeing it come, if you're seeing that my energy is fading, I'm feeling a little bit more tired, I'm a little bit more cynical, I'm frustrated, you know, all of that, then you're able to then start to prevent the onset of ill mental health. And with that, I mean, there's many different things. You can self-support, or else you can reach out to a professional if that's available. But whatever you're doing in terms of your mental health interventions, it's ways in which you're trying to enhance your psychological well-being. So that whether you are looking at healthy coping strategies, whether you're looking at ways in which you can kind of pause and reset. I really like the theme that recharge and run, that the recharging is as important as the running. So it's very important to understand whatever mental health intervention, if it is yoga, if it is running, if it is going on a retreat, if it is, you know, self-care, whatever it is that you're doing is a mental health intervention to ensure that you're preventing psychological distress. So when we think about ourselves as whole beings, right? So well-being is kind of like a buzzword. People are calling it a buzzword, but essentially it shouldn't be a buzzword because well-being has always been an aspect of human life. So it refers to, you know, you as a whole person and knowing that the different parts of you are interconnected. So when you're physically sick, you can't necessarily, you know, get a lot of work done, right? You need to be able to ensure that physically or physiologically you're well. So it's very important for us to be able to think about ourselves in academia as not just the intellectual and the occupational aspects of ourselves. What about the social aspects? Well, how does our environment contribute towards our well-being? Big one in many settings is financially. If you have funding or you don't have funding, what does it actually mean for you in terms of your ability? So remember, we're talking about psychological wellness. When we're talking about well-being, we're talking about all of this. So the psychological well-being has to do with you understanding that, you know what, I do have some barriers to my well-being. Right now, I don't have funding and I really want to embark on this particular degree and I'm going to go for it. And there might be some challenges because I don't have funding. What is that going to mean for me? It's very important for us to be able to think about ourselves like that, because your financial status or socioeconomic status is going to have some sort of impact. I mean, if we look at, you know, learners or students from high socioeconomic communities, generally, they may not struggle with some of the things that you might have to struggle with. So in terms of having a laptop, in terms of having money for printing, in terms of having to, have somebody, pay somebody to edit your work, you know? So these are the things that we need to think about. When we say, am I psychologically ready for this? You have to be able to think about your well-being like this. And this is not to say that if you don't have, then you shouldn't go for it, but you should be mindful that, you know what, when you find yourself slowing down, when you find yourself a little bit more frustrated or resentful, it might be because you're seeing everybody else kind of like running with it, and they might not have the burden of the financial. You know, they might not have the burden of maybe a physical or physiological illness. You know, they might not have the burden of somebody has passed on in their family and they're grieving, you know. So it's important for us to be able to think about ourselves as whole people and think about ourselves as interconnected. So these different elements, the dimensions of well-being are all interconnected and impact us one way or the other. So there's this question that I get a lot. So can ill mental health impact your academic abilities? So I've kind of spoken a little bit about, you know, everyday life stresses. So these are psychosocial stresses. And, you know, all of us have learned to some extent how to adjust to an issue, right? So let's say COVID was a big one. Some people adjusted a little bit more or more easily than other people. Reason being, you'll find that they had much more protective factors, or you find that they might have had resources that assist them to adjust. So for example, one of the things that we have here in South Africa is load shedding. They say we should stop calling it that. So we have load shedding, and there are people who can adjust to load shedding because they have the resources for a generator, they have the resources for a solar panel, they're able to predict, they have backups, they have UPSs and whatnot, right? Whereas other people might not. So that ability to adjust, the resources that help you adjust, are important because they can impact your ability to continue, you know? So if you're not having electricity and you don't have a UPS and you don't have backup, you're finding yourself looking at, for example, the load shedding schedule. And that might mean that between 12 and 3 o'clock, that's the time when you have electricity and that's when you're up. And if it means having to be in a lecture at 8, it's obviously going to then impact you. So if we're looking at mental health and ill mental health, we have to be able to think about this holistically and systematically. So how does what I'm going through right now impact other areas of our lives? And in academia, we often leave that behind. We sit in the intellectual and your ability to perform, to do the research, to data collect, to be able to articulate yourself. We sit in that and we often leave the human elements of the self behind. So that's just psychosocial stresses. And if we're looking at actual mental illness, right? So something that can be diagnosed as a mental illness. We're talking about something that does impact or can impair your mood, emotions, your thinking, your behavior. So obviously, if you think about that in academia, that would have some sort of an impact. But I'm not saying that if you are living with a mental illness, it's not advisable. I'm saying that then you have to consider that managing your mental illness is important just generally, but managing your mental illness in your academic career is equally important. And sometimes we kind of get stuck on the mental illnesses that we are aware of. So we think about, you know, depression, we think about anxiety, but what about things like ADHD? What about things like if you're on the autism spectrum, you know, but the ways in which you take information, some people have dyslexia, learning difficulties, and these, you know, carry on until adulthood. So how is your state of mental health, or if you are living with a mental illness, impacting you? One of the things that we have identified, you know, as psychologists or in the field of psychology and psychiatry, is that depression does have an impact on somebody's ability to, it kind of draws from your cognitive resources. So sometimes you find that somebody who's living with a clinical depression might not have the ability to concentrate all the time. They might not have the energy to focus, to stay with a particular, if there's some work that they need to do, to be able to kind of see it through, or it might take them longer, for example, right? So if you have had depressive episodes, or you do know that you're living with a mental illness, it's important for you to be able to think about how you have to manage that and manage academia. So again, I want to overemphasize, it's not like I'm saying that the two can't coexist, they absolutely can. But when we think about the competitiveness and the performance of academia, to then be able to kind of grant yourself that little bit of grace that, you know what, I have an extra burden of this particular mental health difficulties that I also manage concurrently while I'm doing this, so that you're always just kind of ensuring that how it may impact, you know, your career, your occupational role, or how you interact with other people, your peers, your supervisors, you're able to then consider that, so that if you're not doing exceptionally well, you're giving yourself the credit for how well you are actually doing. So, so for me, and I might be projecting, I will own it. So research has not necessarily been like my favorite child. So just the idea of research sometimes does cause me to feel a lot of stress, and sometimes the stress is the one that makes the research not work, right? And why I put this up here is because, you know, we have to think about stress, right? And we have to think about what stress is. And it's the way in which the body and the mind actually respond to threats and demands of our world, academia, society, whatever it is, right? So we have good stress and we have bad stress. And good stress is the kind of stress that gets you motivated, you know? And then bad stress is obviously the one that can kind of incapacitate you. So kind of thinking about where stress sits in your body is important, because as you're trying to continue or embark on your research journey, you need to be able to then say, you know what, I'm starting to get like frequent headaches, you know, or I'm really struggling with being able to present my work even to my supervisor because I'm feeling like, you know, I'm not doing as well, you know, but how is your stress impacting you? And how are you understanding that in relation to your research? So it's very important for us to be able to think about that stress does show itself up in so many different ways. And when is it that, you know, your research is causing you significant stress, and then possibly you may need to take a bit of a pause or a break or recharge? Or when is that other stresses in your life are now impacting your ability to function in your academic journey? So just quickly before I end, I just want to run through burnout. And burnout is a topic that it's another one that people say is a buzzword, but it's a state of psychological and physical exhaustion caused by excessive and prolonged stress. So we've spoken about stress and we've spoken about stressors, right? But essentially what happens with burnout is a person then starts to feel it presents itself with a lot of depressive symptoms. So you're finding that emotionally you're feeling, you know, anxious, you're feeling overwhelmed, you're feeling very sad, you're feeling very low. Sometimes you find yourself a little bit negative. So there's a lot of like cynicism and pessimism. So thinking, you know, I can't get this done. I'm not going to be able to do this. It's too much. And then what unfortunately happens is you internalize that language, you know, so you're finding that because you are tired because of the prolonged stress, then, you know, you're looking at what you need to get through. And there's this feedback loop because you're now not getting through what you need to get through. Then you start to like speak to yourself in a way that you are internalizing this as a sense of inadequacy. So burnout is a very prevalent, so I guess post-COVID or during COVID, it's something that was identified as very prevalent because of the way people had to adjust to like different work settings. And then sometimes, you know, not being able to have boundaries in your work. So working, then plus all the other stresses that came with the pandemic, and a lot of people kind of sitting with the sense of burnout and not necessarily knowing what it is. So even in academia, when you are working and you're feeling that, you know what, I'm not happy, I'm not finding any joy in whatever I'm doing, I'm very negative, you know, there's that, I feel like I just can't get things done. You need to be able to then start to think about this might be burnout. So it's not necessarily just a physical fatigue, because you're finding that with burnout, a person might be very tired, and then you'll say, okay, I'm going to take a time out this weekend and I'm going to rest, and you rest over the weekend, and come Monday morning, you are equally tired. That is when we're looking at burnout, and it's very important to ensure that you do get the adequate help if you are experiencing burnout. So there are different reasons why you can experience burnout as an academic or as a researcher. You'll find that maybe you don't have boundaries. Boundaries are very important. Boundaries are there for you to be able to manage your space, what you can do, what you can't do, what you can commit to. Also, there are certain personalities that we do have. Okay, I won't go into that, the personality of the academic, but there are certain personalities that have a lot to do with our ability to perform. So how do we receive failure? You know, how do we receive it when other people have boundaries? How do we receive it when somebody does better than us, you know? And if we are always competing, you find yourself that you're pushing, and it may then reach a point where you are experiencing burnout. Another thing I think is like I've written here, that actualization. So the idea that, you know, as soon as I get my PhD, then I've arrived, right? And sometimes we sit with that and we put ourselves under a lot of pressure. And when it's not happening, because we've seen with the PhD journey, it can move in whatever direction it wants. When that's not happening, then we start to find like the sense of that resentment and that cynicism and that pessimism. Then obviously, this is my second last slide, I think. Then obviously in academia, because there are demands, there are pressures, there are high workloads, and you'll find that a person might not be able to get adequate peer support or supervisory support, and then you're just kind of running and not feeling like you have a sense of direction. You find that maybe there's too many deadlines, and then because of that, then you're taking on more than you actually can, and you're not able to pause or stop when you feel you need to, and then you're reaching a state of burnout. So here's just a few things of how you can manage your stress and how you can try to prevent the onset of burnout. Physically, it's nutrition, hydration, drink water. Caffeine is amazing, but sometimes we need to limit it. Mentally, the things that we need to do to ensure that we are feeling all right. So what do we love reading? Do we love going out into the sun? Do we love gardening? But whatever it is, focusing, centering yourself. Then obviously the emotional, a lot of like the expressive stuff that you can do. Then socially, support groups. So like this is a support group, you know, it helps you want to be able to be part of a community where there is a stressor. Research might be difficult for you. Academia might be a very difficult space for you. But you know, when you have support and there are people who are also like, yeah, I'm also experiencing the same thing. You're not isolating yourself in that. And then that helps you to kind of like share the stress. So these are just a few things that are helpful for you. Thank you for your time. I think what I really wanted to emphasize in this slot is that academia is difficult. It's a difficult place to be in. And sometimes we bring in our marks and we bring in our abilities and we leave ourselves behind. It's very important for us to ensure that we are going into our research journeys and academic journeys and not leaving ourselves behind. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amina. And I know that we've gone overboard by 5 minutes, but I'm going to bring the next speaker so that once all the speakers finish speaking, then we'll open up for a discussion, open discussion. So please keep your questions. The next thing on the agenda is tips for completing a PhD proposal and then its defense. And I mean, we have an astute scholar and she is the head of Department of Community Dentistry in the School of Oral Health Sciences at the University of Witwatersrand. I mean, her current responsibilities include administration, management, training, teaching, coordination, research supervision, and examination of undergraduate and postgraduate students. I mean, Dr. Yolanda Malele-Kolisa, thank you so much for giving us a space in your afternoon. With all your busy schedule, you chose to be with us here and inspire the next generation of scholars globally. So please, over to you. I think, yeah, we can see your screen. Yeah. Go for it, ma'am.
Can you hear me? I'm not used to
loud and clear, ma'am.
Oh, all right. Thank you so much.
Yes, and I think you can put your slides in. You can put your slides in. Yeah, I say slice. Can you imagine? I think I need slice of pizza. Go for it.
I think it's time for break, as you can see. Anyway, thank you so much, Dr. Kleman. Indeed, Miss Amina did say when you hear people talking about the introduction, you feel, no, it's too much, just say my name. But indeed, I welcome the introduction. And as according to the script from Dr. Tenza, I will just do the few tips regarding the research proposal and the proposal for Masters and PhD. She did say I can indeed touch on Masters as well, because some of the students in here are Masters. So just relax, listen to the few tips that I have to say. Obviously, all of us, or at least those that are registered, they have supervisors and they do have a template, depending on the school and the institution and the country that they are. And these things will change from one institution to the other. So my brief here is just to give you the tips regarding what your supervisor is saying. I also found that in my experience, if you keep on hearing about it more from different people, different scenarios, different perspectives, it makes this huge mammoth monster, or at least task, to be palatable. Like you can be able to enjoy research if you keep on hearing many different viewpoints. All right. With regards to the proposal, that's where I'm gonna start. The two, it isn't for both masters and PhD, are not very different. The template is generally the same. The difference between the two masters and PhD would be the intensity of how deep you should go in terms of a course content. And in my experience, I realized that usually for the PhD, you also have to touch on the conceptual framework, and then also just touching on the difference between the proposal and the defense. In the defense, you've actually actualized your research and you are reporting about what you did. So indeed, a proposal is a very important document. It defines your question. And it plans on how you are going to do your research. It is in essence a plan, but it is that's why we say without a proposal there is no plan, and without a plan it is difficult to have proper research. So my tips include the usual template that everybody would know from their supervisors. However, when you start, we usually say it's got several sections, and indeed as is dependent on many institutions. But my tips without the title, rather referring to the title is mostly related to the keywords. This part will definitely change as you go along in the proposal journey. Don't mind, don't worry. One of the tips that I give my students as well when they start, whether it's undergrad or postgraduate, especially when they're not sure of where to start or how to start, is just to find the keywords of any field that you're interested in. Type in the 2 keywords on Google Scholar, and titles or journals will come up, and this will give you a title, or at least you refine the title as you go along. If you haven't decided with your supervisor which field are you going to go to. When it comes to the background, my tip is, indeed, it is just a concise literature review. You need to make sure, I think the greatest tip is your literature must be very recent. Unless you are talking about these pioneering study. I know in dentistry, we usually, I'm a dentist by profession, so in dentistry, we usually call it this pioneering study that taught us today that sugar causes dental caries or dental decay, and the more sticky the sugar, the more the severe the dental caries. This study was done during World War I. So for this one, because it was pioneering, around about 1940s, so it is kind of allowable. However, it's important in your background, obviously, to go for your current debates. And the other thing that needs to be in your background, things related to what are the gaps in literature, and it is also important to highlight the top papers. In my experience as well, when it comes to the justification or motivation and significance of their study, it can be the same. As you can see somewhere, I have a stroke. However, it can also be different. It depends, in my experience, on whether you're doing a PhD or a master's. Usually, when you're doing your master's proposal, a justification could be related to your motivation or the rationale of the study. However, you'd have to tease out when you do a PhD, because it leads to the significance. So the two are not necessarily the same, but of course they lead to the same thing. And then when it comes to research questions, these are centrally, the aims that are unpacked. Where I found also when one does research, we tend to be bogged down by these big terms, and therefore think it is very difficult. So it is not. You just have to, indeed, a question is a question. It means you ask yourself, where am I going with this? Where will it fit within the whole research world? Obviously, the methodology, it is one of the important part of the research. And I believe your supervisors, if they haven't told you, they will tell you. So it is basically about the approach. And depending on the approach, as in the design, whether you're taking qualitative or quantitative, it could be different. My advice here is you just need to read up a lot. If you're going to do a certain methodology in terms of, let's say, data collection, you're using a questionnaire, which will be your data collection tool or your measurement tool. It's important that everything, it is detailed, it is referenced. And for those that are, for instance, using questionnaires, it is better to take questionnaire that has been validated. meaning it has been used by somebody in literature. By this, you would have a reference for it. Avoid having to develop your own questionnaire, because that means you will never complete that study. Because before you can even collect data with that questionnaire, you first have to go validate it yourself, and that's a study on its own. I think methodology, let me just, remember, I'm just giving you tips. I know your supervisors would have given you proper or guidance. The other important headings with regards to proposal, I have here limitations. I think it's important that you state them beforehand, even though you haven't started your research as yet, but it shows that you are aware of your field and you've read a lot, and the gaps that you haven't identified in the literature community. So it's important that you state them beforehand. You might have those limitations yourself, which it makes it easier later on, as I will give you another tip with regards to the defense. So those are just the minor tips when it comes to doing a proposal. Of course, these are the important headings that, in my experience, they have to be there at least. They're just the basics, and you will just unpack them with your supervisor. All right. Now comes the stressor. Miss Amina, thank you so much for your presentation. I could see myself in most of your slides, what you were saying. It can be stressful. We all look forward to the end, but yeah, sometimes the end can be daunting. And I think one of the tips is one mustn't stress when you don't complete on time. We tend to pressurize ourselves. Fortunately, even if you are sponsored and your sponsor gave you time, I think once you stress about the time, it even elongates the process. So I hope indeed we'll be able to take care of our mental health. Support, it is very important, as the previous speaker said. And I think one of the tips as well, just before I dive into my slide, is we are attending a whole lot of support. And for example, the support from the Tenza Hub and the Loving Gate. And I believe if you are attached to an institution, there are so many courses, so many refresher courses. However, usually they tend to come at the time when you don't need them. I'm just going to say wrong in inverted commas. And then when the time comes, you're like, yo, I should have listened that time when they were giving us tips. So yes, save these resources and listen even when you feel you're not there yet, because that time will come. And I tell you, you'd even remember even the tips, or rather the examples that they were said at the time, because they were relevant at the time. Recently, a colleague of mine, I am from VETS, School of Public Health. Usually this is where they would do the defenses. I also want to say that the terminology would differ with different institutions. Some of the institutions call it a viva. Some, I think at VETS, we call it an interim presentation, but it is daunting. You are naturally nervous. What I told the lady was, just remember the work that you did, you are an expert, My work was in oral health related quality of life, and I read it in and out. I knew all the conceptual framework, and that's going to be the case with everybody. That is why it's important, to do a thorough literature review. So you will be nervous, but remember that you are an expert, except for a few people that would be in that room, depending on whether you're doing it on a large audience or just a few panelists, if your institution will have few panelists. But even those people, they would appreciate what you have to share with them, and they are in a mood to teach. So in your nervousness, just know that be teachable. They are willing to teach. They are not out there to catch you. And it is a teachable moment and a learning moment for you as well. So that's just the first one. Another tip with regards to your story and your research, I'm just saying story because we tend to associate it with big terms. Of course, quality of life, you would think, and I'm in the room with experts, you have to say or mention the big terminology, because I'm just going to give you the tips on the questions that they are likely to ask. If, for instance, tell us about your research, you don't have to take it into the big words, just say it briefly more intense terminology and questioning with regards to concepts will come. But at first, make it relatable, because you are in the people who understand research and they understand your work, they understand your challenge. So just relax, and it will also make you relax just to first opening line, just relate about your research in a narrative way or a story way. One other tip that is not related to defense, but is also related to preparing for a defense, because in order for you to be at the defense stage, you should have some institution want you to have completed your thesis, or some you're nearly there. So ask a colleague or a peer who is obviously in the academic field, but not within your theme, just to proofread, because you have been working on this thing for about 4 or 5 years, some of us, and then you would miss even the obvious one. Obviously, it depends on the chunk of the amount of work that you are giving them to proofread. So when should we prepare? The real preparation indeed starts at the beginning, at the proposal stage, and that is why you need to cover all you tick all the boxes at that stage. Once you finalize on the topic, start creating a library, and this is obviously you would use some referencing software like EndNote, Mendeley, Zotero, whatever you are comfortable with. Start creating a literature review, and then you start your own brainstorming. You need to have a journal, you need to have a notebook where you just write. I found that if you just write things, just flow without referencing anybody, without just your own thoughts from how or why you felt the need to do your study, this information comes in handy during the write-up stage and the general discussion stages. You get ideas from experts and feedback. So these are the things that you need to do as you are finalizing your topic. So all your notes, keep them safe. You will need them 2-3 years down the line as you're writing up your thesis. With regards to format, as I said, it depends. Some of institutions call them a viva, an interim seminar, and some of the panelists, it's either only the experts or your internal and external examiners in the panel, but some of the institutions it would be the full room, you can imagine. In my case, it was just prior to COVID, and I'm one of those who are not doing well with the huge target audience. And I remember envying the people who had to present after me because it was this way online. I mean, I'm more comfortable online. But regardless of that, do your homework, prepare. Just remember that nobody is out to get you. Everybody wants you to get through the process. And I also thought, these are some of the important questions that come up whenever throughout the journey. But some of them might come, obviously, within the defense during your presentation, whether it's online, whether you're facing them, and whether you're just with a few experts or a larger audience. This is when you have to be the first one, what is your study about and why did you choose it? For instance, here, you just need to tell them, obviously, your title, the key aim and objectives. Do not be tempted to go full house here, because this is just an opening question, and there will be a time where you have to state everything. Be concise at this level. You can state the personal and always the academic reasons why you wanted to do your study. And then the follow-on question could be, how did your questions evolve during the process? Remember when I spoke about the title, it is bound to change. You are going to, and do not be discouraged about this. And in addition to the title, everything changes. Everything changes, the process, the methodology. So you need to report about this. Be critical about why it changed, like why it evolved. For instance, the aim changed based on you found a new method on literature review, or there was a new gap, or whatever that you thought you want to research. You find that by the time you do your literature review after a year, things have changed. The questions have been answered. So now you need to come up with new questions. So you had to change and explore new gaps. Methods change, as I say. Sometimes you have to stop using the method that you thought you would use. So all these are the things that you need to report there, because it shows that you prepared. It shows that you know how to engage with literature. It also shows that you know how to apply literature. But sometimes the questions might not change. If things didn't change, you must, also say why, you found that. It also happened in my case. My study at the time, my significance is going to be the first amongst the HIV adolescents in South African oral health. Come 4 years down the line, fortunately for me, that was still an issue. It was still the first because nobody else had done it. But as in terms of literature review, it hadn't improved. So sometimes things remain the same, but sometimes they do change. So don't be afraid that you have changed direction, because it's important. It shows that, you were engaging with literature throughout. Keep notes and journal, as I had advised. It will come in handy during your defense, during your discussion write-up, which can be another mental block, by the way. How did you design your study, and why did you choose your design? Again, here you just have to say why, articulate what you're doing, justify your methods. Remember, it's in the form of an oral, which can be daunting, but you just need to unpack your methodology basically briefly. For instance, what is the latest in literature review regarding your design in your context? Link the design to the aims and objectives. Sometimes what would have been in a literature review regarding a study design, perhaps literature recommends a longitudinal study, but it might be different in your context because nothing has been done. At first, you want to explore, so therefore you're going to do a quick cross-sectional explorative study, or in your context, you feel you need to start with the qualitative first as compared to the qualitative. So the context based on what you read can change, and the design that is proposed in literature might not necessarily apply to you. So articulate it clearly, check the theory around your choices, the frameworks, etc. One other question that might be asked is, what were the main shortcomings and limitations from your design? No research is perfect. You should be able to point out all the weaknesses, the biases, the strength. You should be able to have the pros and cons for your methods. Also state how you would have mitigated. Part of my task is to supervise the undergraduate, and they are very big on coming up with the shortcomings, and they end up having to shoot their study down. That's also important not to do, but it's also important if you foresee that cross-sectional study design that you are proposing to do has a shortcoming, don't hide it, state it, and state why you cannot do any other study. Usually it's related perhaps to time constraints or costs, but you must also state the ways in which you try to minimize the limitations. If you didn't, how will you account for them? How will you do it? How will you do it differently? Say the limitations. Basically here, do not hide, do not fear your weaknesses, state them, and also have a stance or a response in how you plan on mitigating them. They feed into future research and recommendation from your research. So the limitations would be, according to this, for this phase of the study, however, future research, I recommend they do longitudinal studies. You couldn't do longitudinal, you did a cross-sectional study design, however, you propose that future research could do that. Few more questions. How did your findings fare with what is currently existing? Meaning, are your findings in agreement or in contrast with what is in literature? Again, your engaging with literature should help you. Don't hide or shy away from the different findings. I remember I used to have a friend who was doing a lab-based study, a PhD, might I add, and at the end of 4 years, the experiments did not come up as they did. And they went on to have a good mark in their defense because they did not hide everything. In fact, they had every reason, explanation why the experiment did not come out as they were expected. It could be a whole lot of things, maybe the chemicals, maybe they couldn't do anything else, or the temperature, but there's always a reason. As long as you record, note, make notes, journal, then you'd be able to explain. Because imagine after 4 years, you cannot start again. And it's not like you didn't do what you set out to do. Okay? So it's important that you state your findings, whether were they in line, do they agree or do they disagree with what is in relevant literature. Findings, or your findings in relation to your aim. What were the key findings? For this one, you know, sometimes when you do research, you want to answer a certain research question, objectives, but sometimes we do have your collaterals or your coincidental findings. So for this one, just state, be concise. Just don't talk about the things that you did not expect at this stage. Just talk about were you able to fulfill your objectives, your aims, your research question. Just go straight and have an answer for all of them, because sometimes you find that, especially at PhD level, you have got 4 objectives. So did you answer all the 4 objectives? If you only answered 2, why couldn't you answer the other 2? Exactly, this is what is expected here. Do not be distracted and go astray. And then the next question will come. Were there any other results that you found that you did not plan or set out to do? Those will be your coincidental findings. You talk about them as well. You talk about why, you know, they were there, what the original expectation were, and how you might have gotten what you ended up having. You know, your unplanned sidetracks, things happen, COVID happened, people do not expect to have things that last longer, and then maybe the extension in literature, rather in data collection, would have, you know, made things become different. So this is when you talk about your coincidental findings. Sometimes it will be related to the lack of representation, you know, explain why you had these unusual findings. The other important one that is really related to empirical research is what biases may exist into your research. All studies have some form of bias. You must be fair and be objective. For instance, in terms of data sets, sometimes there is under or over representation. Sometimes the bias in the design, as I had said, you want to do literature recommended longitudinal study. However, due to time constraints, due to cost constraints, you just decided to do a cross-sectional study. You might have biases in the interpretation. You are a researcher, especially for the qualitative study designs. They usually say you as a researcher, you're also a tool for data collection. So your personal biases, for instance, you're doing a study on GBV, you have been personally affected as a person. So obviously you are biased in the way you collect your data, in the way you, even though you would have a structured interview guide for your IDIs, for your in-depth interviews, you still have your biases. So that is why it's important, you know, to know them. We usually say note them on your journal, so that later on, you know, when you write up your discussion when it comes to the qualitative studies, you need to think about them and make sure that they do not influence what you are researching. State how future studies could account for those biases. It's important for this one. Whether you are PhD or master's level, you need to have all the terms about all the existing biases out there. Response bias, recall bias, selection bias, and there are so many. And you might as well also learn about the confounders and the difference between the two, because there might be just 1 or 2 examiner that feels, you know, this is the time where they also need to test whether do you know about the different types of biases. So some of them might not even be applicable for a specific study. However, please know them, prepare for it, and say, for the recall bias, I know about it, it refers to this ABCD. However, for my study, it did not apply. So that shows you've done your work. Be careful not to tear your study down. You know, this is also in relation to the limitations as well. So don't not, indeed, you've done what you did, whether it's PhD or master's, and you found your results, and it was followed scientifically. So now you cannot just, you know, critically put down the study. 2 more tips. How can your findings be put in practice? And then the other one is, if you could redo, how will alter the approach? So this is related to your study findings. I mean, literature. What does it mean for, I think for this one, in other schools, they would put it where you have to, the program implications or the policy implications for your study. What does it mean? First, you must be able to explain it in just simple terms. Some of the studies, I remember in the School of Public Health at some point, you need to have a policy brief. This is just mentioning your study finding briefly for the policymakers. You know, they are not average Joes, but when it comes to your study, at least you are the experts and you do not understand the big terms. So you must just be able to put it in simple language so that this is what it means for policy. You know, look at your initial justification. Why? What does it mean to people? And for this one, context is key. Think of the people on the ground, that is the health benefits. Put it simply, you would have done a very complex experiment testing very complicated medicines, but when it comes to the benefits, put it simply. Be realistic with your findings. Prepare for this question. Think, how will your research solve the problems? How the academic work will impact by your work, action points for people. This is for the, let's say, for this, my findings were A, B, C, D, and therefore I recommend these actions for instance, with regards to dealing with the adolescents and HIV care. I recommend integrated care. I recommend you know, ABCD, just put them in action points so that it's easy for people to put it in practice. And then the last one, you would have mentioned your limitations, your biases, your shortcomings, but if you could redo your study, how will you alter the approach? Again, this one displays the fact that you know, you are indeed an expert in your field, and you know what things, now that you have experienced and ran through the journey for 5 years, you know what is it that you shouldn't do or you could do better. For instance, how would you change the design? If it was a mixed method, perhaps you started with a quantitative type of a study, now you would feel, I should have started with a qualitative so that I can have, you know, a better items, better questions for my questionnaire so that it can improve, you know, so that it can answer the research question better. So it could literally be anything. Perhaps, you know, your sample size was a problem because you decided to go and do your data collection in area A. Now that you know area A has got those issues that you only found out during your research, so you would rather go to area B. So again, this one you'd be able to answer well if you kept on taking your notes, journaling throughout your journey. Here, they also want to see if you were able to learn from the past, because there's always lessons learned in every situation. Touch on the weaknesses. In hindsight, I did this, or literature suggested it. However, for future research, this is how we feel we need to go. I think this is my last tip for you guys. The next one is just you know, information with regards to what I found was helpful as I go along the journey. Important apps, and maybe before Dr. Tenza kills me, the first one obviously is the Tenza Hub, and then the LabIngate one is one of them, useful website that you guys can touch on. However, these were very useful, you know, in my journey. The Zotero one, Mendeley, is free. Of course, EndNote ended up being sponsored in my fellowship. However, these would be useful for anybody who wants to do anything related. The others are related to your the images. I think the important one would be the Dropbox or the Google Drive, which means backup, backup, and backup. You cannot afford to lose all the 5 years work or less. You know, it's important to do that. I think this is my last slide, Chair. Thank you. I hope I was audible enough and visible.
Thank you so much. You've made my day. As a matter of fact, I'm glad I'm the last one, because by the time they get to me, you people would have said everything. But I want to open up this time for questions. I think that Amina talked about mental health, and then the good professor talked about proposal and how to defend your proposal. And I think that is an opportunity. We have about 15 minutes that we can, Jojo, we can talk about questions. So if you have any question, please you can unmute yourself and ask, or you can type it and then we'll read it. But Prof, somebody just sent me a question. I want to read it out to you. The person says, how can I identify a research gap to know that this thing is worth doing and it's a PhD material? Because I get into the middle of my work and one professor comes telling me even master's student will not do this work. I'm so disappointed. Can you advise?
I'm not a prof, doc, so I'm confused. Who are you asking? Is it for me?
It's for you. It's for you.
All right. Yeah.
You are a professor in the making, so just accept it.
I receive. That's a very important question. In fact, and it can be really discouraging. I don't think we should be speaking with students like that. However, what I usually advise when it comes to topic selection, obviously you follow your passion. You cannot do a research on something that you really hate, because you'll be looking at engaging the literature for about 4 or 5 years. So choose your passion. Most of the literature, let's say you are interested in HIV medicine, and then you go and do in those keywords, Google Scholar, you look at the articles on HIV drugs. Usually towards the end of every paper, there's always a recommendation. They identify a gap. That's the first place to start. Your passion, your field, but also read up. As you are reading up, you find that there is no paper that has touched on ABCD. So identify the gap from literature. That's my experience. It helps a lot. But if you have a supervisor that is indeed perhaps with such comments, it's also useful to ask them, which field do you suggest, Prof? But looking at the gaps, identifying the recommendation of almost every literature paper or journal that you read, you always end up with, I recommend. If it's the study, I recommend. Or in this field, there wasn't any study in this country, so therefore we recommend. That's my advice. Usually, then there is definitely a gap, and therefore it needs to be answered. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof, for the question. Let me just quickly alert everyone on this call that we are recording this particular webinar and then it will be circulated to you, so rest assured. There is a question for you, Doc. How can one formulate research questions that directly point out to the reader the significance and contribution of my study? That is a difficult one. I'm glad I'm not the one answering. I pass on the bullet.
Thank you. Indeed, thank you for the questions. These are like your everyday questions that we all had, as new researchers. Research question. I usually advise my students that research question, it would lead to, these are your objectives stated in a question format. I cannot underemphasize the reading. You need to understand the literature review through and through, because from that, firstly, as you start up, you want to do a study. For instance, there's COVID in South Africa and nothing has been done yet. So you have your just initial basic questions. What is the COVID prevalence in South Africa? That's your normal question. You journal it, and then you go and read up and type in your keywords in Google Scholar. Articles will come out around this. So research question is basically the aims and objectives. And aims and objectives are the unpacking, the research question are the objectives. So you'd have one broad general aim.
Hello? Yes. Any more? You can either mute yourself. Let me check the.
I think I connect.
You are audible now. Yes, go for it.
I had connection problems, but I think I'm sorry. Yeah. Sorry, I'm sorry. It was just, we just had load shedding right now. So connection problem, sorry. But is research questions are your aims, are your objectives rather, and they will be informed by your overall aim. Maybe just in brief. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And just a bit of addition to that, areas to get the gap in your research will be things around the literature review, will be things around the experimental procedure that was done, and you also look at the conclusions and then the discussions that came through. Once you read these things, you should be able to point something out and use that as a guiding principle. And then if you're able to sit with your supervisor, then you can be able to see that you are doing something that has relevance, not something that you just put on the shelf. I'm gonna welcome a last question whilst
Yes.
Miss Busisiwe Matiwane prepares. Yes, can I see? Go for it. Somebody said you wanted to say something.
Yes. Hello, Prof. You spoke earlier regarding the aims and the objectives usually changing as you move ahead with your research. And while that is true, I'm just wondering. I'm just registered in the PhD program this year, so haven't even really started. So I'm just wondering, I spent a lot of time thinking about my aims and objectives because according to what I had read, it's crucial that your aims and objectives are clearly defined at the beginning. So, and you work around those. So if those not keep changing, but if they change, doesn't it somewhat put you off, off track at any point, and perhaps lengthen your program? Well, even if it does do that, that's all right. But my question is just certainly around why is it that, you really worked so hard in establishing exactly what your aims and objectives are, and you think, right, now we can go ahead and do the research, and then they change along the way.
Thank you for the question. Let me correct myself. I hope it was Colleen. Colleen, they will change up until you finalize your research proposal, you present it, but as soon as the proposal is accepted, they will stop changing, meaning they change to us. Once you finalize them, as you start up with your research question, rather your title, that one will change a lot because you'll present it to different professors, different colleagues. They suggest various changes, but at some point you will have your final aim and objective. But once it has been registered, your proposal, you go on and so they will not change. But the other thing that I said later on, now you're doing your defense, whatever that you have changed, it's not your proposal, but it would have been some of the methods, some of the things you had to adjust because you couldn't collect data in schools during COVID because the schools were closed. Now you had to try and do online something. So that's what I meant. But they will change initially, but at some point, once your protocol is finalized or proposal is finalized, you have to just go and actualize without changing. Thank you.
Great. Although, can I also just say something regarding the previous question, the previous person's question, regarding how to identify gaps? What I found very useful, because I spent a lot of time trying to identify gaps, is YouTube. YouTube is very, very useful with videos to help the new students identify gaps in research. There's some very good videos that help you with strategies to identify gaps.
Oh, no, Dr. Tenza, you are muted.
Okay, I just want to add on what Dr. Yoli was saying about the changing of the project. So if you can keep in mind, Colin, that there are different phases of the research journey, starting with conceptualization phase. This is a phase before you have an approved, before your proposal has an ethics approval. So if you can think about it that way, that from the day your research is still a sentence and an idea in your head until you have an ethics approval, that phase is a phase that anything can happen in changing towards a right direction, molding, remolding, and changing your topic. Then hence it's put into different levels of scrutiny, maybe at departmental or faculty level, until it gets to ethics, because ethics is the last stop. By the time it gets there, it must be so refined that It's scientifically sound, and it's also feasible. So, but even though then that is conceptualization phase. When it gets to, once you have ethics and you go to field work, the field work will be a test of how feasible it's all the plan that was on paper. Then some changes may happen there, something you have envisaged that you would do, it may not be feasible to do, and none of these levels of scrutinies manage to pick that. And then you would be, that would be another level that could impose some changes. But what would happen is that at defense level later on, it's where you would be able to reflect what you were able to manage to do. And I mean, your supervisors would coach you if, is it worth now being called a PhD if it maybe whatever you couldn't do, maybe you would be advised to add a certain component if maybe your work has become weak. But at that phase, the defense is actually evaluating and examining if whatever that you had intentions to do, did you manage to do, and what were the gaps that maybe you couldn't get to? That would be for future research. So I
Yes,
thought I
thank you, Fred.
Okay.
Thank you. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for this incisive discussion. I mean, we'll push the discussion forward, but the next speaker, it's going to talk about tips for data collection. And Nasi, yes, she is currently pursuing her PhD, and she's a physiotherapist, a physiotherapist degree, and then master's in public health. And then she is Busisiwe. So Busisiwe, thank you so much for the opportunity. And then we hope that we can learn something from you. And then we can now go, after you are finished, then we can also allow some time for some questions. So I hope you guys are taking notes. Please go for it.
Thank you so much. Hello colleagues. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Today I'll be taking you through my data collection journey. So I'll briefly go through my study, what's my study all about, and I'll discuss my experience, the challenges and opportunities, lessons learned, and tips for both the quantitative and the qualitative data collection. So my study was on multiple job holding, which is also known as job practice, moonlighting, or a side hustle. So in my study, I was looking at full-time health professionals working in government hospitals, but having additional paid jobs. So the study title was Multiple Job Holding Among Medical Doctors, Professional Nurses, and Rehabilitation Therapists in Mpumalanga and Gauteng. As you can see on the map, Gauteng is densely populated and mostly urban, and then Mpumalanga is the green, it's mostly rural. So a rehabilitation therapists are your physiotherapists, occupational therapists, speech therapists, and your audiologists. So in my study, I was going to visit 4 categories of hospitals in Gauteng and 3 categories of hospitals in Mpumalanga. So this just to give you an understanding when I talk about the data collection. So the first level of entry of hospitals after the primary health care is your district hospitals. The final stage is your central hospitals. Okay, so in terms of my qualitative data experience, my target was looking at 30 key informant and interviews, and then also looking at 32 in-depth interviews. So the key informant interviews were mostly stakeholders, people from your national, your provincial and your local government, and hospital managers. And then the in-depth interviews was also interviewing health professionals, finding out reasons why people engage in multiple jobs, what are the experiences with the policy that regulates multiple jobs. And then with the stakeholders, asking them their views on the current policy that regulates multiple jobs, and also their experience with working with health professionals on their different engagements in multiple job holding. So the preparation, I had to get permission letters from 56 hospitals before I can get ethic approval. I compiled a list of interviewees, verification of the list, creating a zip folder, so to make sure that I have all the important documents, your guides, because the participants needed to see the interview guide so that they are prepared for the interview. My study started, my PhD was started like in February 2020, so a month later there was COVID. So my data collection started during COVID. So I had included it in my protocol that I would do some of the interviews online. So then most of my interviews were online, with the exception of one face-to-face interview. The pilot work I did with 4 key informants and 7 in-depth interviewees. So the interview marathon, as I call it, that was my field work. So setting up appointments, because everything now was online, and following up with non-respondents. And then the most important thing here is when you speak to someone and they agree, like when you send the initial email, ask them to commit to a time, and then also sending reminders. The duration of this was 8 to 10 weeks. And then I was doing 1 to 3 interviews per day because they were online, so I didn't have to travel anyway, with the exception of that one interview. I conducted interviews from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Sometimes they would go until 9:30, and then 7 days a week, depending on the availability of the stakeholders and the health professionals. I did 63 interviews in total. And then the main challenges with, I think, admin, getting ethics approval, especially in Gauteng, took 4.5 months because the online system is not as effective. And for each hospital, because I was visiting district hospital, there's a committee for each hospital, an ethics committee that needs to see and approve for each hospital. So imagine all 56 hospitals, but only 28. But in Mpumalanga, it was different. So the CEOs will just give me permission and it will just go to a provincial. But with Gauteng, each hospital had an ethics committee that needed to approve before you get final approval from vets. And then I think also for me with finding stakeholders like government officials, because on the Mpumalanga website, there is like they put office bearers that if you need the deputy director, for example, their name is there, their PA name is there. But with Gauteng, you have to know someone who knows someone for you to get people like and know who's in office in a certain department. And also finding health professionals to interview for my in-depth interviews was also a bit difficult because multiple job holding is a sensitive issue. And in South Africa, if you're working in the public service, you need to have permission before you engage in having an additional job if you're working in the public service. So some people then were engaging in multiple job holding without permission. So they were afraid that I would report them. So the technical issues I found were just internet connectivity problems, and that would mean repeating the question so that I would get all the information for transcription. And then in certain cases, I had to do telephone interviews. So sometimes the network coverage wouldn't be the cell phone coverage wouldn't be so good, and I would have a poor quality sound. So it means that spending more time, the transcriber would spend more time listening to the recordings. And then I had one person who did not show for an interview, even after speaking like just an hour before the interview, and they still didn't pitch up for the interview. And the transcription issues were, initially I used a local vendor from Wits, and there were a lot of grammatical errors. And then I changed to a company, but even then I had issues where the company would just skip a whole paragraph, or sometimes they'll write the opposite of what the person had said. So those were the main issues. And then the opportunities were having done a qualitative study with my supervisor, interviewing government officials. So that also assisted me to actually conduct my interviews better. And then COVID-19, I had reduced transport costs, so that was good for my budget. So, and I only had to travel once to a face-to-face interview. And then the pilot work, because Dr. Tenza had advised me to actually do, like, it mustn't be a tick box session. I had to do an appropriate, like, get people that would give me rich information. So that helped me to refine my interview guides and also correct, like, proper note taking. like detailed but short note taking assisted me to pick up issues with transcription, because sometimes that's when, like, when I read my notes and I'm like, but this person didn't say this, or I pick up that there's a certain section that wasn't actually mentioned on the transcript. So lessons learned is early verification of your interview list, preparing thoroughly before an interview. Like, for example, like preparing, because sometimes when you're interviewing a policy maker, knowing like what to probe for, what information you must actually sort for, and also like the importance of knowing your research very well, because now you'll ask them question 1 and then they'll answer question 10. So not forcing your interviewee to actually follow the sequence of question, but being able to move around with how the person is answering the question, but making sure that you get all those details. And the importance of reminding people about appointments, sending them reminders, and sending the link again, because sometimes you send someone the link, they have had 100 more emails after that and they can't find the link. So sending them it again on the day, so that at least it's just right there and they can see it. And early transcription, because then you'll pick up errors and you don't have to spend money paying someone who's not giving you quality work. And also early analysis, so that you see that if you've reached like data saturation, on also seeing what themes are coming up and what information is coming up. And just like practice coding early. So yeah, it just makes it easier for you to immensely like really immerse yourself in your data. And for me, software analysis, because when I did the pilot study, I actually hand coded and manually coded, but after I did the 63 interviews, it was not possible. So I found software analysis useful. So I used MixPDA, but there's NVivo and others that you can use. And then the tips that you can take home for me was quality pilot work, so you can review, and also it gives you, so that the people that interview, they'll give you feedback on your interview skills, on the questions, if they are clear, if they understand them, if they're not reading, and early transcription and coding, and also maybe not having the 3 interviews a day. Like if you're having online 2 interviews a day, but probably if you have to face-to-face interviews, maybe 1 or 2 might be practical because of traveling, especially if you're interviewing government officials, because you might get there and they tell you, oh, there's just the minister just called a meeting, and then you have to cancel, and you've traveled all the way and you've just booked the next meeting, which is like in the opposite direction. So just managing your time and know your research topic well, so that when you're asking people, you are able to, during the interview, probe appropriately. And then in terms of my quantitative journey, I think for me, this, during the questionnaire, the serving health professionals felt like climbing Kilimanjaro and with a bed chest. So I think, so for me, the objective here was to survey 1,442 health professionals in 22 hospitals in the 2 provinces. So 11 hospitals in each province. So the preparation was very extensive. So I designed my own questionnaire, and I had a discrete choice experiment embedded in the questionnaire. So this it's a health economics tool that I wanted to use to elicit stated preferences of like what jobs do people like health professionals prefer. And I had to do extensive research because I had never conducted a discrete choice experiment before. And so it involved extensive research. I went to a training course in Canada. I did 2 pilot studies. And then also involved complex analysis because of the different questions I had in the survey. So the preparation was took quite a big knock in my timeline. And then the next thing was also preparing the procedure manual because of the complexities of studies. And like I said before, that I had to actually tell my field workers, okay, fine, at a district hospital, how will I assess the medical doctors, professional nurses, rehabilitation? At a tertiary, how will I assess? So it had to be detailed and clear, and tell them at each hospital, how many health professionals do they need at each hospital? So it had to be detailed, and it took some time. So during field work, I find the biggest thing is being project management. So that involves training and managing the field workers. I had hired a company to actually manage field workers, but I ended up managing the field workers myself. So I had to do all the administration, from setting up appointments, sending reminders, accommodation, especially in Mpumalanga and some hospitals in Gauteng, car rentals. My questionnaire was online because of the discrete choice experiment, like in terms of how it appeared, because it has to appear a certain way to be valid. And just managing the 15 tablets and making sure that all the routers have data, they have airtime, and they're also managing the DCE, because then I had to check if are there any issues with the tool, and there was a time where I had an error. So making sure that I corrected in time, and just daily checking of my field workers if they were collecting the right amount of participants per hospital. And then with the rehabilitation therapist, my main sample was to visit 22 hospitals. But because the numbers of rehabilitation therapists are so small, then the plan was to visit additional hospitals after visiting the 2. So I still had to visit 4 more hospitals in Mpumalanga and 3 more hospitals in Gauteng. So my data collection took about 4 months, and I ended up visiting 15 hospitals in 29 hospitals in total, and ended up surveying 1,397 health professionals. So yeah, after that storm, there was a rainbow. I'm just not sure if I found the pot of gold, but yeah. So that was mine. So the challenges that I faced during field work. So I'll just briefly summarize these. So I think for me, at each hospital, I had difficulty, especially at the hospital management, I had difficulty accessing managers, because sometimes you call through the switchboard, the switchboard is not answering, there's no switchboard operator, the phone doesn't work, it says it's an invalid number. Sometimes they wouldn't respond to an email, so then you'd have to find someone at the hospital. Like I'd have to call old colleagues to speak maybe to one of the therapists, to go to the CEO's office. So yeah, so those were the main challenges. Also, I think in Gauteng, there's an unstructured ethics committee, because there's no clear direction on, okay, I've received approval, then how do I access the hospital? And then they also don't give you the information that you still need further permission. I was visiting 6 departments for the medical doctors. So then for pediatric, I had to speak to the head of department for pediatric, for anesthesia, for all those things. So that's 6 head of departments that I needed to speak to, 6 matrons for nurses. And for nurses, if pediatrics, for example, had 6 wards, each ward I had to speak to each person. So this was not stated at the beginning. And then even with clearance from birth, and also from a permission letter from the ethics committee, there were 2 clinical managers that denied access to the health professionals. And then in terms of the health professionals, I think identifying doctors because they don't have name tags, and in some hospitals, because I was looking at medical officers, which are also medical practitioners, and consultants, which are medical specialists. Like their medical specialists are not always at work, so it made it difficult to survey the doctors, and it meant just spending like longer hours and just looking for doctors. And there were also few therapists in Gauteng in Gauteng district and tertiary hospitals. So the opportunities are when we had an active manager who would tell everyone, from the head of departments to the health professionals. And then when you get to the hospital, they're like, no, we know about your study, and the CEO has told us you can proceed. So for me, that was great when I had that opportunity. And in some hospital, the ethics committee chairperson would orientate you around the hospital, show you where the wards are. And then also, I think with health professionals, their willingness to assist me, because especially with their busy schedule, because the questionnaire was like 10 to 20 minutes, depending on the person. Like if they're techno-savvy, so it'll take them shorter, and also understanding. So those for me were the opportunities. And in terms of technical challenges, I think the online questionnaire, when we had, like Amina spoke about load shedding. So when in some places, actually in most places it happens now, when there's no electricity, there's no internet connectivity. So then we had to use the offline questionnaire, and with the offline questionnaire on RedCap, we still have to send the information later to the server. The opportunities were, if I had an error when I'm using the online questionnaire, then I could quickly correct it, and then it's automatically corrected. But if it's offline, meaning that I have to take on RedCap, log in, correct it for all 15 tablets. So those were the disadvantages. And then in terms of, sorry, I think I went the wrong direction. So in terms of additional tips, okay, sorry, in terms of lessons learned, I think for me, the most thing that I can tell is just preparation, like early preparation is very important. Like, even if you feel like, okay, I'm not at that stage where, like, if you have time and like you are in between two objectives, like start with another, like if you have time with your quality questionnaire, start with something and prepare some sort of thing that is needed and an objective that is needed for later. So for me, visiting the facilities prior data collection. So I think for me that could have saved me a lot of time with the introductions and training of field workers, because I trained my field workers at the same hospitals where I did the pilot work. So I didn't actually experience the challenges with having to do the introductions all over again and having to people. And at the hospitals where I did the pilot study, the ethics committee just chairperson and told everyone about my study. So I didn't need to do that. And she took me around and I met everyone. And with administration, the administration was a lot. So my supervisor actually in hindsight was thinking we should have gotten an administrator. So in terms of like field workers, including field workers during piloting, if possible, so that you can take along your field workers thing, so that they see how each step, like during the introductions with the managers, during the introductions with the departmental managers, they see the challenges and you also see what challenges they face. Because with me, I did the pilot study. I'm a health professional. It was easy for me to access the hospital. I know like the way ins and outs of how a hospital works. So it was more easier for me. And then I think hiring the field company was, for me, I didn't find the benefit. And I think just getting training, getting to people that are, yes, it was nice because I got very skilled field workers, but they actually had to do all of the work. And then what's like, if you can do early data cleaning and analysis, please do, especially when you have like enormous data like I have, like that will be doing. And daily to check their progress. Sometimes somebody will say, no, I managed to get 6 nurses today. Just make sure on RedCap or whatever software you're using, is it 6 completed surveys? Because sometimes with internet connectivity, then it doesn't get completed. Okay, just a few more minutes. 2 more minutes. Tips for quantitative, I think for me with budget planning, I think you need to use codes that are, and don't use estimations. So don't say, well, I think traveling to Mpumalanga or to this hospital will cost so much and so much. No, like get proper codes for accommodation, get codes for car rentals, get codes for like, just get proper codes and use that. And then also include all the costs for your project. Like don't make sure, like think about your project and think about your project. Okay, fine. So I'm going to have 2 field workers. They'll be traveling from this point to this point. So I need accommodation. At this point, I need this. So think about how it will work in your brain and then work out a cost at each stage so that you can have a clear and a detailed budget and also a correct budget so that later on you don't find that you have a shortfall. The procedure manual, very important. Make sure that you do proper research of your target population and how your study will work so that you actually give them practical and detailed and simple information. And then make sure after your piloting that you correct your field work and your field work training and make the necessary adjustments as you experience when you go to field. That's why I'm saying it's better to go with your field workers, because then you have 1 or 2 additional people to tell you that, okay, I struggled with this, I struggled with that, so that you can fix and improve your procedure manual. Test in terms of pilot work, feasibility of your utility of conducting the survey while people are working. Just the practicality of the procedure manual. And then the field workers, choose field workers carefully, daily checks of their work. If there's conflict, sort it out immediately. and then make sure that you get training on site. So it mustn't be in a bedroom and they never visit the hospitals. I think additional tips would be setting appointments, note down the contact person that you spoke to, keep their name and number, because next time you call, if you call through the hospital, you might not find. So make sure you speak to that person and continue to speak to them. And the procedure to access management, make sure when you visit the facilities, you've got all your essential documents, your permission letters, your clearance certificates. And then also on ask the person if they give you approval, okay, what other additional permissions do I need? Visit the facility prior to actually see that, okay, fine, these are the challenges I'd face on the day I come. And then just teamwork is important. As much as you the project manager and the lead researcher, your field workers are your teammates. So yes, they don't make them feel like you are the boss and they just work as a team. Because if, let's say, you are the ignition and you start in the car, but one wheel is flat, you can't move. So as much as the wheel does not feel as significant to the engine, but if the wheel is not moving, if the wheel is not working, you're gonna not move. So make sure that you work as a team and not try be like boss and they are your subordinates type of treatment. And also like make sure that you collect quality data. So it's not about completing data collection, but make sure that your data is quality, because you cannot come back and then redo the data collection. And then clear communication and precise communication, like be clear so that everybody understands what needs to be done. And most important thing I found, because I can work myself like crazy, is rest is as equally as important as working hard, and rest is not a reward but a necessity. And it's always cheaper to do the job the right time the first time, and then it's always cheaper to do the job right the first time, and if you don't have time to do it right, when will you have time to do it again? So there are budget implications. So if you don't do it properly, like it means that you must spend more money to go back to field and collect the data again. So make sure you do it properly, not about just finishing. Thank you so much, and sorry for going overboard. Any questions?
Thank you so much. Are you? No, I'm here. You know, this lag in the system is it's funny, but it's good. Guys, I think we have 10 minutes. Wait. Yes, we have 5 minutes. 5 minutes for some questions, and then we can take some 10 minutes break. Can we have? I mean, Busisiwe, thank you. For me, when I see young people present work like this, it just tells me one thing, that you actually painstakingly did this work, and so you have the confidence to talk about it. And for me, that is the message I take from here. And if you are a master's, a PhD, or an honors student on this platform, don't go and pay somebody to do your work for you, because whether you like it or at a point it will come out. Yes, you can get help with how to analyze the thing, but even if it's analyzed for you, make sure that you understand what is done over there so that you can speak to it. Otherwise, my boss will say you'll be a quack, and a quack is a person who portrays they know, but they know nothing. And when they subject your level of competence and thinking, it will show whether you know this or you don't. And so, like they say your sins will find you out. So please, let us try as much as possible to do it, and you begin to enjoy doing research. I mean, you going through these things and where you went through to do all those things, it's really, really, really helpful. And the project management principles you brought into this research is great. So for me, I mean, I doff my hat for you. That's a good one, and we are really grateful. Is there any questions? If there are no questions, and also please, you can type it in the chat, and then I think that all the three presenters would look at it for you. So we dealt with the issues of mental health, and went to proposal, and went to the data collection. And I believe that after we come back from the break, So what we're going to do is that we're going to take a break off. We're going to come back. We will start the next session at 3 minutes past 4, depending on where you are. But I'm using the South African time. So we would come back in 8 minutes. Pardon?
There is
There's
a
a
hand.
question
Oh, sorry.
There's a hand.
and a question.
Yes. Mtuzi, go for it.
Yes, thank you, sir, and thank you, Busisiwe, for a good presentation, and thank you, sir, for your tip that we mustn't pay people to do our work. It's very profound. My question is on the LinkedIn. I've seen some of the researchers posting their questionnaire on the LinkedIn. Is that a proper platform to do data collection? Thank you.
Oh, okay. I think because there are some people, I think it will also depend on your protocol, because on your protocol you clearly state that where you will do your collected data. So some people sometimes they'll do data collection via social media like Facebook. Sometimes they'll be using LinkedIn. So it depends on the type of study and what you said in your protocol. And then for some people, I think you've seen it if you're part of a university where you get a survey via your emails. So it also depends on what you stated in your protocol. So if you follow what you stated in your protocol, and so social media is also a tool that you can use. It's just that there are obviously limitations and also issues and around those, but you are able to use it if that's what you've said you'll do in your protocol. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thanks.
All right.
Okay, there is a question that says, any recommendation for transcription software?
Oh, yes, I think I forgot to mention. So I used MXQDA and I found it very useful, but there's NVivo, there's a lot of others that are probably less cheaper. But I think for me, MXQDA was just user-friendly and easy to follow. Yeah, so especially for me being a first-time user of it. Yeah, but those are so MXQDA is the one I would actually recommend. But the others also work well, depending, because my friends have used NVivo and they found it very user-friendly. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think Dr. Tenza, just let me put it out there. Since we are creating this community, there is one gentleman over there that can actually do proper statistical analysis, but can also help people formulate the right questions and the way to do it. So I think that let's see how we can bring all these people, create a platform for them. I know that Busisiwe, this is just 20 minutes. You have a lot of things to talk about, but I think that this is me extending this thing to Dr. Tenza to know that when we go into the webinars that we do where we bring people to deal with specific aspect of research, these are the young and vibrant scholars from Africa that we can actually use, so that people on this platform knows that there is somebody that looks like them, that thinks like them, and is able to do cutting edge research to address the socioeconomic challenges that we face on a global scale. And and I'm also quick to say that it is not a race issue, but the idea is that when you hear people speaking that are young, vibrant, that are going through similar challenges, sorry, but are able to do this work, then you also know that there is hope. There is hope for the future, and there is hope for research, because at the end of the day, this is all about research. Having said that, let's take our 7 minutes break, and when we come back, I will hand over to Dr. Tenza. So you have 7 minutes, and then we'll come back. Thank you so much.
What time are we coming back, Doctor?
We're coming back in 5 minutes, actually. 5 minutes.
What time?
Exact time.
That should be 4:05.
Okay, thank you. See you soon.
Oh, goodness, it's like repeat.
See you soon.
Are you a researcher? Are you in need of the nearest laboratory with state-of-art equipment to execute your project? Are you currently planning to contact a laboratory or research host for your research visit or bench work? Are you a laboratory? Are you looking for increased research patronage and visibility of your laboratory? Are you interested in establishing robust research collaboration both locally and internationally? Generate revenues on laboratory equipment and sustainability of equipment maintenance. Are you an equipment manufacturer or buyer? LabIngate Incorporated, Canada, is here with an unparalleled solution by introducing LabIngate Digitalized Laboratory Innovation, LDLI, a one-stop platform to meet all your research needs. LDLI is a user-friendly platform with a capacity of over 10 million equipment, more than 100,000 laboratories, more than 5 million researchers, offering effective networking across the globe. Execute your related research transactions with ease today by signing up on www.labingate.com/register. We look forward to having you on our platform. LabIngate, the gateway to world's laboratories.
Are you a researcher? Are you currently struggling to identify the right equipment for your research? Are you having challenges locating the equipment? Then LabIngate Incorporated has the solutions to your problems. LabIngate is an online platform with a capacity of more than 10 million equipments, 100,000 laboratories, and 5 million researchers in 5 continents across the globe. Visit www.labingate.com to be one of the million researchers on the platform. You can also create an account with us at laboratories to make your services and equipment more visible to researchers.
Hello, dear research colleagues. What are the challenges you are facing? Are you a researcher? Are you in need of the nearest laboratory with state-of-art equipment to execute your project? Are you currently planning to contact a laboratory or research host for your research visit or bench work? Are you a laboratory? Are you looking for increased research patronage and visibility of your laboratory? Are you interested in establishing robust research collaboration both locally and internationally? Generate revenues on laboratory equipment and sustainability of equipment maintenance. Are you an equipment manufacturer or buyer? LabIngate Incorporated, Canada, is here with an unparalleled solution by introducing LabIngate Digitalized Laboratory Innovation, LDLI, a one-stop platform to meet all your research needs. LDLI is a user-friendly platform with a capacity of over 10 million equipment, more than 100,000 laboratories, more than 5 million researchers, offering effective networking across the globe. Execute your related research transactions with ease today by signing up on www.labingate.com/register. We look forward to having you on our platform. LabIngate, the gateway to world's laboratories.
Are you a researcher? Are you currently struggling to identify the right equipment for your research? Are you having challenges locating the equipment? Then LabIngate Incorporated has the solutions to your problems. LabIngate is an online platform with a capacity of more than 10 million equipments, 100,000 laboratories, and 5 million researchers in 5 continents across the globe. Visit www.labingate.com to be one of the million researchers on the platform. You can also create an account with us at laboratories to make your services and equipment more visible to researchers.
Hello, dear research colleagues. What are the challenges you are facing? Are you a researcher? Are you in need of the nearest laboratory with state-of-art equipment to execute your project? Are you currently planning to contact a laboratory or research host for your research visit or bench work? Are you a laboratory? Are you looking for increased research patronage and visibility of your laboratory? Are you interested in establishing robust research collaboration both locally and internationally? Generate revenues on laboratory equipment and sustainability of equipment maintenance. Are you an equipment manufacturer or buyer? LabIngate Incorporated, Canada, is here with an unparalleled solution by introducing LabIngate Digitalized Laboratory Innovation, LDLI, a one-stop platform to meet all your research needs. LDLI is a user-friendly platform with a capacity of over 10 million equipment, more than 100,000 laboratories, more than 5 million researchers, offering effective networking across the globe. Execute your related research transactions with ease today by signing up on www.labingate.com/register. We look forward to having you on our platform. LabIngate, the gateway to world's laboratories. Hello, dear research colleagues. What are the challenges you are facing? Are you a researcher? Are you in need of the nearest laboratory with state-of-art equipment to execute your project? Are you currently planning to contact a laboratory or research host for your research visit or bench work? Are you a laboratory? Are you looking for increased research patronage and visibility of your laboratory? Are you interested in establishing robust research collaboration both locally and internationally? Generate revenues on laboratory equipment and sustainability of equipment maintenance. Are you an equipment manufacturer or buyer? LabIngate Incorporated, Canada, is here with an unparalleled solution by introducing LabIngate Digitalized Laboratory Innovation, LDLI, a one-stop platform to meet all your research needs. LDLI is a user-friendly platform with a capacity of over 10 million equipment, more than 100,000 laboratories, more than 5 million researchers, offering effective networking across the globe. Execute your related research transactions with ease today by signing up on www.labingate.com/register. We look forward to having you on our platform. LabIngate, the gateway to world's laboratories.
Are you a researcher? Are you currently struggling to identify the right equipment for your research? Are you having challenges locating the equipment? Then LabIngate Incorporated has the solutions to your problems. LabIngate is an online platform with a capacity of more than 10 million equipments, 100,000 laboratories, and 5 million researchers in 5 continents across the globe. Visit www.labingate.com to be one of the million researchers on the platform. You can also create an account with us at laboratories to make your services and equipment more visible to researchers.
Hello, dear research colleagues. What are the challenges you are facing? Are you a researcher? Are you in need of the nearest laboratory with state-of-art equipment to execute your project? Are you currently planning to contact a laboratory or research host for your research visit or bench work? Are you a laboratory? Are you looking for increased research patronage and visibility of your laboratory? Are you interested in establishing robust research collaboration both locally and internationally? Generate revenues on laboratory equipment and sustainability of equipment maintenance. Are you an equipment manufacturer or buyer? LabIngate Incorporated, Canada, is here with an unparalleled solution by introducing LabIngate Digitalized Laboratory Innovation, LDLI, a one-stop platform to meet all your research needs. LDLI is a user-friendly platform with a capacity of over 10 million equipment, more than 100,000 laboratories.
Welcome back. Welcome back. Can I have the advert?
Networking across the globe. Execute your related research transactions with ease today.
We can stop the adverts now. Thank you very much. Let's go for it. It's 6 minutes past 4, and I would like to welcome our next speaker is Dr. Calvin Mabaso. Dr. Desmond, are you here?
I am here. I'm here.
Okay. Can you kindly do the profile for Dr. Calvin Mabaso on my behalf? Thank you.
Okay. Let's do that now. Okay. So, Dr. Mabaso has over 15 years of experience as a professional academic and researcher in the field of human resource management. He is currently working as the qualification leader for human resource management undergraduate program at the University of Johannesburg. Something is giving us feedback.
Please unmute. Please mute that.
Yeah, he is a human resource expert, a consultant, and writes on broader human resource areas, including remuneration. Sir, I'm coming to help. I'm coming to you so you can help me renegotiate my salary. He is also a sectional editor for the South African Journal of Industrial Psychology and South African Journal of Human Resource Management. His research needs are total rewards, talent retention, employment relations. And you are the guy. You are the guy, Chief. You are the guy. You are the guy. You did the right thing, Tenza.
Yeah.
Well done.
Thank you so much. So
Go for
I'd
it.
like to welcome Dr. Mabaso. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, we have two sessions, two speakers remaining. It's Dr. Kelvin Mabaso and Dr. Desmond. Dr. Kelvin Mabaso is speaking on what are the examiners looking for in a PhD thesis when they are examining a thesis or a dissertation or a master's research report. So after Dr. Kelvin would have, Dr. Desmond would be a speaker on planning and motivation for the research journey. Thank you so much for staying this far, and I'm sure you are going to enjoy the session. Over to you, Dr. Kelvin. Thank you so much. God bless you.
A very warm welcome to everyone on board. Welcome to this session, which is also very, very interesting. I'm so inspired with the assistance that you're also giving to the postgraduate students. So if I may, can I share my screen?
Yes, please.
All right, let me do so. Please do indicate when you can see the screen, and then we can start.
We see the screen. You can put it on slideshow.
On slideshow.
Yeah, thank you.
Is it okay now? Okay, another thing,
Yes.
colleagues, yeah, I'm just requesting, I think for bandwidth purposes, if I can be able to take off my video so that I can be able to do this thoroughly.
Yeah, you can. It's okay.
All right, thank you so much. All right, colleagues. So basically, my slot is on what we are looking for as examiners in terms of the postgraduate. All right, so this is my table of contents. So basically, I do have an introduction. I will also touch base on the examination process, and then another perspective that I'm going to look at is that what are we looking for as examiners? For example, one of the things that I'm going to touch base on, the introduction and background, the literature review, the methodology, as well as the analysis and reporting. So those are the most critical aspect that we look for, especially when we are doing the examination. All right. Okay, then I also have a very nice picture here. So you can see the picture by Ivan. So these are the questions that when you have submitted for examination, you always ask this question. For example, is it done now? Am I going to graduate? And then at the back of your mind that you also know very well that there will be some if, or they also but, as well as there's also maybe, simply because whatever that you have written, unfortunately, another person might also not consider as good, right? And then another thing that you should also take note, especially when you are writing a dissertation as well as the thesis, if you are lucky enough. So basically, you are writing for your supervisors here, right? It's your supervisors or your promoters, and then you also so those people, they are going to read your work, but the most critical people that are going to read your work, it will be the examiners, right? So basically, you need to make sure that you also goes all out so that you can be able to impress these examiners. As you know very well, that the examiners at times they can also be very, very harsh. So I think you need to be prepared for such eventualities, right? And then let us look at the introduction. So basically, when you talk about the issue of your post-graduation, right? We will touch base on the issue of the postgraduate supervision, which is a very essential prerequisite, which will also indicate that you will be able to successfully complete your studies. It's either your degree in this regard, and one of the positive things that can also happen here, it will be the issue of your higher throughput rate in terms of the postgraduate students, right? And then you also know very well that we do not have a full doctoral or PhD thesis or a dissertation curriculum as such. So in this regard, that is where the examiners are the one who are playing a major role here in terms of what is also expected. So basically the examiners, in most cases, they are the one who are going to be able to set the standards of what is accepted. As much as your supervisors, they have done their work, but the final word, it will also come from the examiners. So basically, once you have submitted the standards that has been set, it will also indicate whether the degree needs to be awarded or not. And then you will also take note that each institution, they also have different guidelines. So basically the institution will also provide the guidelines to the examiners in terms of what do they have to look for when they are examining, as well as when they are constructing their report. So basically the only thing that is also unclear to all of us in this house is this: how do we conduct our assessment as examiners, which is also a burning question here. So that is why we are here. Okay, let me take you through to the process itself. I'm not going to be very long. So basically, once you have done your field work, your experiment, and then that is where you would be able to do your write-up, and then you can also submit it to the faculty, where the faculty will also arrange the issue of intention to submit, right? And then there is also a very important aspect in this regard, where we move to the step number 2, which is a submission of a dissertation as well as the thesis. So in this regard, this can only be done once your intention is in accepted status, right? And then we move to the third step, which is under examination. So in this regard, that is where examiners will also be provided, and they will also be appointed, and then will also be approved by the faculty, and then your dissertation or your thesis, it would also send to them. It depends from institution to institution. Some institutions, they take 8 weeks for the examination. So basically, it will be amount of 8 weeks. I think that is your 2 months, right? And then once the examiners, once we have done our work, and then we are also expected to provide the outcome here. So basically, as a students, depend on your policies, and then that is where you will also be given an outcome. So you'll receive an email notification that the outcome has been reached, and then communicated to your department, and then they will also take you through on what needs to be done in this regard. And then step number 5, after we have done all in most cases, the dissertation or the thesis, somehow you will also find that you will have maybe some corrections. If the examiners are happy, there will be some correction that you need to take care of in this regard. And then once you have done that, that is where it will also be approved either by the Senate or by the assessment committee. And then that is where you will go to step number 6, which is graduation, where you will also receive a letter from the faculty which indicates that your correction that you have also submitted is also accepted, and then you can be able to graduate. Then the next question, which is also burning, which is also very interesting here, is that what are we looking for as the examiners? Like I've indicated, one of the things that we are going to look for, it will be the issue on the thesis or dissertation itself, where we need to talk about it, the introduction as well, the introduction and the background to the problem. So basically, as a student, you need to make sure that you provide a clear introduction, a clear background to the problem, and then you need to be very clear what is the problem, right? So you need to be very explicit on what the problem is, right? And then one of the things that we also look for as the examiners, we are going to look at what has been done in the problem that has also been identified, and then how are you going to add on top of that. I think on the previous speakers, that is where we also spoke about the issue of the identification of the research gap. We will also be very strict in this regard, because we will also look what is the research gap in this regard. So it is also very important that as a student, you also pay attention to that, right? Like I've indicated, the introduction chapter is also the very most important chapter of all. So you need to grab the reader's attention. So basically in this regard, you are grabbing the examiner's attention, and then you also tell them what is the problem, and then how you intended to solve that particular problem with your study that you are also conducting, right? And then in this regard, as an examiner, if I understand that the thesis or the dissertation after the introduction, then I think let us be honest. I think you are halfway towards your examination process in this regard. But you will also take note that in some instances, as an examiner, you'll find that I will read the entire introduction as well, the entire introduction chapter, and then you find that the problem is also not identified in this regard, and then the contribution is also maybe the contribution will also be revealed at the end of the last page. So in this regard, you might also have some challenges in this regard, right? And then this is a major gamble. Some readers may give up before that point and not know the end of the contribution, but you need to be very fair on the reader and tell them the contribution, as well as keep telling them. You need to be very explicit in this regard. And then the next thing that we need to look for, I also have some pointers here in terms of the background on things that needs to be there. For example, we've got high quality here. So one of the things that I would also look for, it would be the issue of the original contribution of your study. That is where we need to touch base on the significance. So how significant is your study, right? And another thing that I'm going to give you high marks if you are also taking a route which is also a creative approach. So you need to be very creative in this regard. In that alone, it will also give you more marks as a student. And then another thing that will also give you more marks as a postgraduate student is the issue of the problem itself, or the issue itself, how interesting it is. So all of those things, they will also give you more, just like I've indicated, that you need to be very clear on what the problem is, as well as you should also be able to demonstrate the significance of the topic that you have also participated of in the broader field of inquiry in this regard. So you need to make sure that you also package that clearly, so that the examiners will not have any problems, right? And then another thing that is also very important, it will be the issue of your low quality. So all the low quality, so those are the red flags. So those are the things that might also make the examiner not to award the degree itself. One of the things is not original or research the wrong problem. So basically, if you are not specific about the problem itself in this regard, that alone, it can also put you in the back foot. And then another thing, the questionable integrity of approach to thesis, as well as the presentation of finding, all of those things, they can also put you in the back foot as well. And then let me move away from the introduction and background, and then we go straight into the literature review. The literature review is also a very interesting, it is the backbone of your current study. So in this regard, we need to make sure that we also pay a special focus in terms of the literature review, as well as the issue of the contribution itself. And then one of the things that the supervisors here that will also do is they will always guide you to the right direction, as well as indicate, especially on the redundant sections, as well as advise where to cut. And then another thing that you should also take note in the literature review here, it will be the issue of, you need to make sure that you also provided the understanding of the variables that you are dealing with, as well as the engagement in pertinent criticism, the debates. So basically, you remember that as a postgraduate student, you need to read as many articles, as many books as you can, so that you can be able to devise a lot of debates in this regard. And all of those things, it will also give you it will give an examiner an understanding that you do know your topic that you are also researching. And then, as much as we value your voice, but your voice is also supported by the other scholars in this regard. And then another thing that you should also strive for is to issue of the grasp the interrogation, as well as the appropriate application of the theory, the concept, as well as method. So basically, one of the things that you need to make sure that you also do, the examiner they also look for, is the issue of how you interrogate these particular variables that you might be working on. The theory, you remember that in most cases, the majority of studies, they will will also be underpinned by various theories in this regard. So basically, as a researcher here, you need to make sure that your study is also underpinned by various theories. And then you need to make sure that you also apply that particular theory in a correct manner. And then you also understand their different concept so that the reader understand that, okay, this particular individual, they do not their story, right? And then another thing that would also that we also look for is the demonstration of a detailed, comprehensive, as well as accurate of the understanding of the research area that you are also doing. For example, I am involved in the issue of remuneration. So basically, when I write, so I need to make sure that I also provide the rich insight as far as my niche area is concerned in this regard. And I need to. Another thing that is also very important is the issue of the creativity, is the issue of your innovation. So you need to make sure that you also provide all of those things, right? And again, the specialized knowledge of the subject, but also a strong grasp of how this topic relates to the discipline. You need to show how does your study relate to the entire discipline that you are also involved in. So those are the things that that the examiners will also look for. Okay, then another thing, it will be your broader issues, evidence of mastery, command over research methods, search strategy, as well as reporting, as well as analysis. All of those things we look for when we are doing the examination. Okay, then the connections between the introduction as well as conclusion, the points made, as well as the claim that are also asserted, all of those things are also very important. And then the other thing that we also look for is the issue of the logical flow of your work. So you need to make sure that there is also a clear logical flow in terms of your writing. All of those things, it will also give you so many marks. And then the examiners will also be very impressed. You remember that I've also touched base on the issue of the theory. And then in this regard, you need to make sure that you also discuss the theory as well as the variables, as well as you indicate how does this theory perfect fit in your study that you are also doing in this regard. Okay, then another thing that that I also have on the literature as well, I also have your high quality as well as the low quality. So all of these things, they will also give you more marks as far as is concerned. For example, you remember that the critical evaluation of appropriate theory as well as research literature, all of those things the examiners will also look for. The synthesis of the relevant information that also directly relates to the thesis as well as the dissertation. So basically, it will be the issue of the alignment of the variable that you are dealing with. All of those things we also look at. The issue of the theoretical debates as well as your theoretical trends, we also look for those things. Should it happen that you are also using a theoretical framework or a conceptual framework, if we have developed a conceptual framework, you need to make sure that you also have a logical flows, as well as you also provided the relationship amongst those variables that you have. All of these are low quality. All of these things, I think they can also put you at the back foot. Should it happen that you've got a lack of understanding or you misunderstand the theory itself, all of those things, it can also put you at the back foot, where you find that the examiners will also not award you the marks that you also devised. Then the inaccurate presentation of ideas a result from existing research. So basically, you remember that your research, as much as it's new, but it will also be related from the previous scholars. What have they done before? So in that regard, you need to make sure that you also present, you not misrepresent the information or the results from the previous scholars. Very, very important. And then the scope of the literature review is also inadequate or is too broad, disjointed, unfocused, addresses not directly related to the focus. You need to make sure that you are also not all over the show. I know that the information, it can also be too much and overwhelming, but you need to make sure that the information that you also put on your dissertation or a thesis, it should also be related, not to be all over the show. A lack of confidence in engaging with the literature or theory, all of those things, it will also show us as the examiners that you do not understand the topic or the literature or the research that you have partake on. So you need to make sure that you also discuss the issues or the literature in a coherent manner, as well as provide the innovation as well as creativity. Okay, then another thing that we also look for is the issue of failure to critique others' work or explain why the results of different studies are different. For example, the method, the population, as well as the time frame. You will also take note that your study might also take a different detour simply because you might also be dealing with another particular topic, as much as something that has also been done in your field, but you might find that your study will also come with the new knowledge in this regard. You are allowed to critique other studies, and then your study can also maybe provide a new insight on the phenomenon. Okay, then let us move to the methodology. That is also another important aspect. So in this regard, the methodology can also mean different things to different academic discipline, and then there are also significant differences in the value placed upon in the assessment of the higher degrees. For example, the social sciences, their methodology, it might also not be the same with those from the health sciences as well as those within the engineering. So in this regard, the issue of the methodology, we need to make sure that we also take into account what the field or the discipline that you are in. But again, you need to make sure that we're also very, very innovative in this regard. And then another thing that is also very important, and we need to be as original as we can, as simply because you find that the different academics, maybe from another discipline, might their methodology, it might not be the same with the other discipline in this regard. So we need to make sure that we also well cognizant of that. So in this regard, I do have high quality. So these are the pointers that you need to pay attention to. For example, the methodology that you might choose. For example, we do have the qualitative, you've got the quantitative, as well as your mixed method. All of these things, they need to be justified, right? It needs to be appropriate, and then you need to provide a justification why you are choosing that particular method. So basically, the examiner, I think they need to understand that, okay, the reason why the student decided to choose the particular method, these are the justification. If you do that properly, and then it will also score you big marks, right? And then the understanding of the limitations, you'll also take note that each method, it does have its limitations. You need to understand the limitation as well as how are you going to address those limitations in this regard. And then another thing, the sufficient information, so that all the steps in the method and analysis are also very clear. So basically, you need to provide as much information as you can in terms of the steps, the steps that are also involved in the research methodology. For example, your research philosophy, your research paradigm, your sampling, all of those things, you need to provide a clear guidance in such a way that the examiner, you know, when you are writing the method, in fact, not the methodology, but the entire dissertation or a thesis, you need to write as if the person who is marking your work is not a subject matter expert. You are educating those particular people. All right, these are low quality. So these are the low qualities. For example, if there is also an inconsistency in terms of conflict between the theory as well as the method, you will also take note that the theory, it can also have a major bearing in terms of the methodology that you are going to choose. So in this regard, you need to provide the justification based on the theory or on why you have chosen that particular method or a theory in this regard. And then the less appropriate methods to answer questions, all of those things, it can also, we can see that as a low quality, and then in this regard, it can also put you in the back foot because we might not be able to give you enough marks as we can. And then the missing information, so that all steps are not clear. So basically, you remember that I've indicated that when you are writing here, you need to make sure that the person that will also be marking your work or assessing your work and does not know the methodology itself. So in that regard, you are writing in such a way that you are also educating the examiner. But if there are some information gaps, that alone, it can also disadvantage you as a postgraduate student. All right. Let us look at the next one where we are going to look at the analysis. So this is the analysis. We have done the methodology. So basically you have collected the data, and then here you are also doing the analysis as well as the interpretation. And then that is where we also discuss your findings in this regard. So I also have some pointers here in terms of the quality. So the way how you interpret the findings or the results, they need to be systematic as well as they need to be logical. So basically there should be a logical flow in this regard. And then they should also be intelligent structure. So basically you need to have a very clear structure, and then the findings well supported with evidence and are also linked back to the theoretical framework as well as your conceptual framework. So basically that is where you have to make sure that you also re-look at what has been done by other scholars, as well as support. It's either your study support what has been done before, or it does not support it, or it has come up with new knowledge in this regard. Your result, they can also do that. And then you also articulate clear as well as compelling story here. So basically when you are discussing your analysis here, I think you need to tell a story here in terms of your results, and then you need to make sure that your results, they are also supported by the various scholars that have done the research before. Okay, another thing that you should also do, preempting, anticipate, and as well as addressing inevitable critique. You remember your study is also unique. Like I've indicated, that you are also allowed to make sure that you also critique other work, right? Okay, let us look at you need to make sure that you also carry the reader into context as well as educated the reader. You remember that as an examiner, as much as I do have expertise, but I still wanted to be educated. So basically as a postgraduate student, you need to make sure that you also educate other people. And that would also tell me that whatever study that you have been doing, it means that you understand it, and then you have also contributed immensely to the body of knowledge. And then it is also very important that we can also hear your voice here, your ideas, and then your ideas, they should also be supported by the relevant literature in this regard. Then the low quality, so these are the things that can also disadvantage you. For example, if you cannot be able to explain at the end what has been argued in terms of the thesis. You remember you do have the results here, but if you cannot be able to put an argument or an analysis or a discussions on what your study has also gathered or found, that alone it can also put you in the back foot, simply because we will have that idea that it means that you are not ready to partake on the postgraduate students, simply because you cannot be able to discuss your finding or discuss your result, right? And then lack of coherence in the overall argument. So basically, if you are all over the show in terms of your arguments, all of those things, it can also put you at a disadvantage. And then unsubstantiated claims made without evidence from research, theoretical or thesis research. You remember I've indicated that we still take your views or your ideas, we still take your voice, but your voice, it needs to be supported by the relevant literature, relevant literature from other scholars, right? All of those things, if you've got the bold statements which are not supported by the literature, so unfortunately in this regard, we will also critique you as examiners, and then that alone, you can also lose marks in this regard. And then sweeping generalization and made based on rather than analysis. Basically, another thing that is also very important, we cannot also be, you need to be mindful not to generalize your findings in this regard, simply because your study, it might have been done maybe on a scale, or not on a broader scale. So basically your findings cannot be generalized in this regard. Overstating claims about generalizations from your findings, all of those things, I think you need to make sure that you also avoid that, as well as you remember that I've indicated that one of the things that you're also expected to do is to critique your own analysis. There are certain things that you might have written, for example, maybe your research objective or your research question, of which when you collected the data, it might not be achieved. So all of this, all of those things, you can also critique your own analysis. Okay, we are still here. Then the other thing that you can also, when I'm talking about it, the issue of the presentation as well as the writing itself here, just like the rule thumb, you need to make sure that your work is also logical as well as concise. Don't be all over the show. And then the clear expression of ideas with goals and posting at regular intervals, easy to read. And then another thing that is also very, very important, written in active voice and first person, it will also depend on the discipline. Another thing that is also very, very important, you need to make sure that you also proofread your work before you can be able to submit it to the examiners, because it is also very disappointing where you find that maybe the students has also submitted the work, but it has a lot of errors. Another thing that we do not that we also pay attention to, it would be the issue of the references. I know that you might also be overwhelmed, but you need to make sure that all the references are also indicated on your work that you are also doing. And then another thing, the issue of grammar as well as punctuation. That is why it is also it is always advised that you also take your work to the language editor who can also be able to do all of these things. I know that it is also very costly, but at the end of the day, it can also be able to assist you. Okay, colleagues, it looked like I have paused my share here. Can you still see the screen? Okay, all right.
We see the screen, okay. Yeah.
All right, all right. Then the low quality, the errors as well as inconsistencies in referencing. So basically, if you've got the references that are missing in your thesis or dissertation, unfortunately, we will critique that, and then you'll also lose mark, especially those that are doing masters, where you find that as much as you were going to get a distinction, but if you've got all of these inconsistencies, that alone it will also dent the chances of you getting a distinction. The sloppy presentation, many errors of grammar, spelling, punctuation, the referencing method or the referencing style, that alone, if you are also not consistent in terms of the referencing, for example, you are using the Harvard, you're also using the APA, all of those things, it can also not work in your favor in this regard. Okay, right, the last slide that I have is that poor referencing. This is usually the sign of a poor thesis or a poor dissertation. The two go hand in hand. So you need to make sure that you also do a thorough work as well as you also proofread your work. And then the issue of your the typing areas, the textual mistake, it will also indicate the lack of attention to detail, as well as sloppiness in the text indicate a sloppy research. So you should also avoid all of those things at all costs, simply because it can also indicate that your research is also not accepted. And I know very well that we also spend a lot of time when we are doing the research, so we cannot afford to make this a silly mistake at the end of the day. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Are there any questions? Over to you, Doc.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kelvin. Wow, what a presentation. You can stop sharing. Thank you so much. Wow. Please, let's have some questions for Dr. Kelvin. So Dr. Kelvin took us through he sat at the seat of an examiner, and he, now we know the secret is out. We now know what makes a passing and an average dissertation or a distinction dissertation or a failing dissertation. And I must tell you, it's so sad to see the dissertation going down the drain. I once found myself forced to let it go with a dissertation that had so much of the qualities that were on the low quality side. So let's take some questions, colleagues, and I'm sure you have lots of questions on this regard. You can, yeah, just have your hand up if you have a question. Are there no questions? Please, good students, this is your workshop. It's your gift from Tenza Research Hub, and it's a free of charge gift. We are here to help you. There are academics here who also are here to support and deal with your questions. Thanks, Dr. Desmond, for your comment. The presentation was indeed well done. I like it when he speaks of logical, a test that has logic and concise, and that shows that the student has understanding. And then, you know, one of the things that I liked the most was when he spoke about is there a question? Please mute yourself if you are not in this, if you are engaging in outside activities. Okay. With the indication that there is no question at the moment, I just want to say that so we've had these presentations starting from Amina, who took us to how do we get our mental readiness to the research journey, and we moved to Dr. Yoli, who took us through the proposal, and then we had the Busi taking us to the actual field work. We saw ourselves in Mpumalanga collecting data with her, and now we are examining this thesis. I just want to say to you that Tenza Research Hub role in coaching is to take you through all this journey and be able to support your journey and create a space where you can be able to be coached how to get the methodological sound work, and also to get your academic writing worth having your research sent to examiners. On that note, I'm going to call, if there is no question, I will call our last speaker, Dr. Desmond. And Dr. Desmond is an academic at the School of Engineering. And I partner with him in our passion for postgrad support. And I'm not really going to read his long CV, which had lots and lots of awards, and which I had to cut them down for the profile to fit the booklet which I've shared with the participants. So, Dr. Desmond, over to you, my brother, at this moment. Where are you?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, yes.
So,
Dr. Desmond will deal with the planning and the motivation. Thank you.
Good. Thank you so much. And I'm delighted to be here. I deliberately did not do any slides because I personally want to talk to people on this platform from my heart, and also to share some of the philosophies that have guided me all over the years to get me to where I am, and hopefully will get me to where I want to be. So it's very, very important. I mean, I'm supposed to talk about motivation and planning for a postgraduate journey as you zoom into 2023. However, it's not going to be the normal or the conventional way of doing things. First of all, the word motivation, I see it as a push factor. What that means is that that thing is external. So you need something outside of your body to be able to facilitate the process that will lead to what you want to do. However, I would not want to use that word. I would rather want to use the word inspiration. And that word basically is a pull factor, something that draws you closer to your dreams. Now, all the speakers have touched base on all the things that I actually wanted to say, which is good. But let me remind us first that when it comes to doing masters, whether by coursework or research, I have termed something the tenet of a master's work. The first thing is that doing your masters, you should be inspired to master the field that you are venturing into. That's number one. Number two, you need to master the relevant techniques. It has been said here over and over again, and I like what Dr. Mabaso said. Poor writing or poor communication is an indication of deficit in your thinking, and is an indication of deficit in your inability to assimilate information. That is how I understand it. You should also use your masters to understand the consequences of your research findings. What that means is that, what does this thing mean to the body of knowledge? What does this work mean to policymakers? What does this work mean to changing the socioeconomic challenges that we faced? For me, and I will say it here, if your degree cannot contribute to solving the socioeconomic challenges that we face as a nation, as a continent, as a world, is just a piece of paper, and it is not even worth the ink used in printing on that particular paper. So right now, we are driving an agenda where we want our postgraduate student to grow up to become expert that understands simple things deeply, expert that is able to trust a process but go ahead to verify them. I mean, when Busisiwe was talking, she gave us an insight where she goes to collect data in a way to verify some of the hypotheses that she had. It is very, very important that when you engage your masters, you engage it from the inspiration lens, not from a motivation lens. Because motivation comes and goes. Inspiration stays with you. And finally, you need to master the scientific method. However, when you are doing a PhD, there are three things that comes to bear. One is you should have independent critical judgment. Dr. Mabaso talked about the fact that you need to be able to critique your own writing. You need to be able to accept constructive criticisms. Just bear with me. I'm going to drive you home to tell you why you need to do these things to be inspired to go into 2021 and develop yourself in a way that you become so good that you can't be ignored. Right now, we are not looking for mediocre people. We are not looking for average people. We are looking for people with depth, people that understand their craft, people that knows what they are talking about, not people that only come and they are full of hogwash. We are not interested in that. We are interested in the next generation of academics, engineers, scientists, economists that will be able to look at a problem and says, this is how we solve it by thinking outside of the box, not even thinking outside. As a matter of fact, we have to break that box. That's how I see it. Number two, you need to make sure that as you are doing this PhD, you are closing a gap in research. Now, you must use all your readings, your thinking from your masters to develop that critical thinking, analytical appreciation of what you are doing in a way that you can sweat the small stuff. And by so doing, it will give you the impetus to be able to go ahead and challenge conventional wisdom. Anything that we are studying today that becomes knowledge started as a hypothesis. Somebody just said, I had a hunch, I had an insight, and went to prove it and make sure that it becomes knowledge. However, if you want to do a PhD, you should be able to challenge that fundamental wisdom and challenge that conventional thinking in a way that gives you an idea to push the boundary of knowledge. We are talking about issues around ESCOM and all that. Yesterday, I was talking to a friend of mine, a very powered person who is a senior management in one of the universities. And then I said, when people went to meet to talk about ESCOM, it was politicians who met. Where were the engineers? That is a question for another day. The last thing I want to talk about is your PhD should be novel, or it should be original contribution to knowledge. What that means is that you should be able to craft your argument in a way that helps us understand a phenomena better, or in a way that contributes to or extend the boundary of knowledge. Now, for you to be inspired to do this, I come with an acronym. First of all, you need to care. Care, C-A-R-E. And then number 2, you need to grow, G-R-O-W. The C in care means 1. Inspiration comes as a result of somebody striving to comprehend simple things deeply. You will not be able to challenge conventional wisdom if you don't capacitate yourself, if you don't develop yourself to a point where you can look at knowledge, look at what you are studying, and challenge it from a very fundamental level. So 1, comprehend simple things deeply. The A is apply the right attitude to what you are doing. You are going to start 20, or you've started 2023. You may be at different phases of your academic journey. Know that academic journey is also a career. At the end of this career, you are going to be given something that looks like pension. That pension is synonymous to that certificate that says that this one has doctorate in I know nothing, or doctorate in I know just something, or doctorate that translates into an expert. And here I use the word expert deliberately because these are people that can profess that they have the capacity to look at a problem and solve it. In this life, we have, whatever student you are, you belong to 2 categories. There are those that are well-filled minds and those that have well-formed minds. Right now we have Chat GPT. It means those people that have well-filled mind, that are only encyclopedia, they just memorize stuff. They just have stuff in their head, but they have not developed their mind in a way to apply those simple fundamental concepts to challenge what is we know and what we already exist in. They are the people that will become the backbenchers. And you are not just doing a PhD for doing sake. I mean, a paper was written by a professor from University of California, Berkeley, that says that we need to bring thinking and philosophy back into the PhD degree. What does that mean? We have a lot of people parading themselves with DR, but when you engage them, they are very shallow. They are empty. Very, very empty. They know nothing, because for all you know, that particular work, they got somebody to collect the data, analyze the data, paid them, and then they showed up. I love it, the fact that very soon, when Chat GPT comes around, a lot of our presentations and our decisions around how we defend PhD is going to be done, where we want to assess the level of knowledge and how you have been trained in a way that you can go out there and challenge conventional wisdom. You can go out there and ask the relevant question. What a PhD and a master's degree does to you is to help you ask the right questions. The R over there is that whatever you do, rise to the occasion. Rise to the occasion with discipline. This is where inspiration comes. If you are somebody that is disciplined and determined, that I want to do this particular master's and PhD so that I can contribute to the body of knowledge, you will apply discipline. You will apply determination. You will not listen to your body, but you will understand that there is something at stake. And then what you would do is that you would make sure that you gain mastery over why you are doing what you are doing. You see, if you know why you are doing what you are doing, it becomes very easy to do it. So some of you right now, you need to go back to the drawing board and ask yourself, why am I here? Why am I doing this? What is in it for me? What exactly am I trying to achieve? The E there is that engage your community. Right now, here you have a community of practice. Bounce ideas off people. Also, go back to the communities that you are coming from and be a shining example. Some of the people that we have in our local communities will never see a university room. But when they see you, and when they see the way you think, they would appreciate how a university environment looks like. The university used to be a universal city where people come with diverse ideas and they are able to get the right mentoring so that those ideas are shaped into product. Because before you existed as an idea in your mother's brains or head. If you don't believe me, go and ask your mother if they are alive. Go and ask them. You existed as an idea, and that idea gradually became courted, and then your mother went and met your father, and something happened and the biological process kicked in and you are the product. University degree, the certificate you are given is a byproduct. The deliverable is you. If you come to a university, you do master's, PhD, and you leave those walls and you look more dumber than you came, you have wasted our scarce resources. We need to find a way to make you pay it back and probably throw you in jail. The G over there means gain relevant knowledge of your field. When you decide to say, I want to, in 3 years' time, I want my PhD to be a talk of the town. There was a man called John Nash. He developed game theory. His PhD thesis was 28 pages. That is what led to the award of Nobel Prize in economics. How did these people do it? Look for the relevant information around your field. This is how you build inspiration. By reading other people's work and looking at what they have done and the questions they've left unanswered, you develop the inspiration to push their work further. The R over there is reach out to others. That is a microwave generation. But it is very, very important that we take stock of making sure that we live life in a way that we build a community around us. You need to have a support group. You need to have a support structure. Those support structure needs to drive you. The O over there is that open up your worldview. Don't say I am an engineering student, therefore I don't care about what happened in remuneration. Don't say I don't care in what happened in psychology. We are a team that is working at different things, and we are like puzzles. We are like jigsaw puzzle pieces. And if the engineer build a hospital, the doctor must be able to use the equipment. And then the W there is walk in wisdom. Now, for you to plan, I want to show you. I love business so much, and so I'm gonna take the 5 important departments in a business. The first one is Department of Operation. Every business has the Department of Operation, and Dr. Mabaso can correct me here when I'm leading the house in the wrong direction. Department of Operation means your body. The first call, have a strategic plan to take good care of your health. Your body is the vehicle that will drive you to finish that PhD. If you are eating junk food, stop. If you are getting less sleep, stop. Make sure that you facilitate the process that brings your body enough rest, that gives you the enough things that you need to be able to think clearly. What that means is that take good care of your body. Have a plan for your body. Number 2 department is what we call Department of Marketing and Advertisement. You are planning to start a PhD, but you don't have a plan on how you're going to finish. You need to put yourself out there, market yourself out there in a way that by the time you are finishing, people will look at you. So I want you, so when you open your mouth to speak, you tell the world who you are. And in order to do that thing very, very well, one, you need to make sure that how you look like online is how you look like in reality. These days, recommendations are given based on word of mouth. This will be a guy who said, I did a PhD in Harvard. Meanwhile, he doesn't know how even VIT building look like. And then they put it there, they get the job. And then when they were supposed to be fixing potholes, they were busy fixing women butts. That is what I am talking about. So market, the way you market yourself is what is very important. The story I just gave you now was a story that was talked about one of the guys who was a CEO who said he studied at Harvard University, and the course he said he studied is never offered in Harvard. So be what you are in reality and what you are online. The next thing is strategic development, strategic partnership. Have a plan, a short-term plan, mid-term plan. There is a colleague of mine, when he started his PhD, he did some work, and that work got published, and he is in the top 1% of highly cited researchers. That particular work was never part of his PhD, but he wrote the paper anyway. As I speak to you now, he has about 7 and something citation on that particular work. He had a short-term plan, a mid-term plan, and a long-term plan. And also learn to delay gratification, instant gratification. Put in the work. Look, you need to develop self-confidence and self-belief. Self-confidence that you have what it takes to do that degree, and also find plans to do them. Now, self-belief in your abilities that if I put in the work, I will be remunerated, because hard work has its own reward. Finally, the Department of Finance. Invest in your life. Invest in your life. What I tell my students all the time is every day, make sure you read between 2 to 3 journal papers every day. Summarize it. Ask the question, what is the main theme of this journal? What problem did they solve? What questions were left unanswered? What is the implication of this research? Finally, because Dr. Mabaso is a human resource person, I decided to put this one last. Finally, the Department of Human Resource. The quality and network of people you have will determine how far you are going to go in life. Don't take this for granted. If you've not heard anything, plan around the people you want around you, your inner circle. If you are a fool and you look for a fool as a friend, you become fool square. But if you are a fool and you look for somebody who is very interested, insightful, who is able to think, that person will help you shape. Look at your friend, the top 5 of your friend. You are an average of the 5. It tells you that only quality people. Finally, I told you I am a very unorthodox person. They say you should talk about planning. I'm telling you, plan around these things. Finally, this one I must pause before I say it. Finally, friends are like elevators. They either take you up or they bring you down. If I've not said anything today, all that I'm saying to you is that you have what it takes. You have who it takes. You have where it takes. And you have when it takes. But the question is, would you put down your pride? Will you put down all the things you think matters and take your destiny into your own hands and run with it? Africa needs you. South Africa needs you. Nigeria needs you. Ghana needs you. The world needs you. But it's gonna take somebody who is inspired, who is driven, who is disciplined to say, I am ready to do this. I look forward to seeing you in the future, and I look forward to seeing you at the top. We will come there and we'll drink coffee. Thank you so much. Siyabonga.
Wow. Wow, amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. Desmond. Wow, 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 wow. This is amazing. This is just amazing. Ladies and gentlemen, wow, full squad. Full squad. Oh, wow. Wow, colleagues, this is just amazing. So thank you so much, Dr. Desmond. I love this. And please, ladies and gentlemen, don't only get a paper when you finish with your master's or your PhD. Grow as a person, develop self-confidence, and have self-belief. On that note, I'm really not going to spoil the moment. I'm going to ask just two things. Can I have one person from the participants who can just have a mic on and give us a verbal feedback after all this wonderful, amazing workshop? I'm so proud of Tenza Research Hub and Lebengate for caring for postgrad students to this level that we've put this together. And this has just been so amazing. So I'm gonna ask one of the participants to just say a word. You can just switch on your mic and just tell us, just one person on behalf of everybody who's brave enough to tell us how you found this workshop as we are closing. Can I get one hand? Am I really having such a shy class? Ow, 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 ow,
I think you need to point at them.
Point! No, no. Come, guys, come. Just one person.
There was a hand up. Yes.
Is there a hand up? Yes, teacher. Yes. Thank you so much.
My hand was up.
Say something on behalf of the participants.
Thank you, Doctor. And thank you to all the speakers and all the participants. I'm very much inspired and very, very motivated. I so wish that I got this opportunity from undergraduate up to where I am now at the PhD level, because the reality is that in the research journey, my observation is that the era of producing scientific research outputs that only prove the theory, it's not helping the country to go forward, because you look at the challenges that we are having socially, economically, and environmentally. They really need an in-depth understanding of those study areas and how we can apply our theoretical knowledge to address those issues such that we can really change the end user's life. Because if we produce something that you get a pass with distinction on paper because you complied with the requirements as per the guidelines, university guidelines, but it's meaningless to the communities, then we won't be moving anywhere. So on behalf of the class today, we look forward to more engagements, and we thank you so much for the support. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate this. It's been a silent class, but I understand maybe most of you are not familiar with the fact that we create this platform and there is no particular student whom we know. You are all new in the first class, and it's always a first class every day, depending on the students' needs. And we are just here to say academics are not too far to be reached. We are here and we really want to be there for you. And Tenza Research Hub, we coach you from day one till you finish your PhD or your master's. And we help you to shape up as a person. Dr. Abioye would like to say something. I was gonna ask him to close for us, but I see there is a question here on the question side. And if you have any question, don't go back home with your question. How do you ensure that participants that fill your questionnaire are really the one you want? If your study is about white people perspective and you opt to do online data collection, what do you write as a specific location of data collection? Okay. This question, I think it was after it, maybe we missed it. It may have been after Busi's presentation on data collection. I think it's linked to the question that Mtunzi asked to say, is it okay to collect data online on the online platform? Of course, it really depends. If you want to investigate perhaps the use of online platform, maybe experiences of using LinkedIn, for example. I'm just putting a question. Somebody in a particular department may have a topic accepted, maybe on social media, on the use of social media platform could be a question. Then if you want to know that it's relevant perhaps to have that study done on the social media platform. It really depends. Where you collect data, it's called a study site. And a study site, it is a site that is where you're going to find the correct people to answer what you are asking about. So I would not personally advise that somebody collect data on the online platform. You could invite people to participate in your research through the online platform, but depending that they meet certain criteria. But I'm not sure if I'm answering this person's question. Is this person who asked the question still in the meeting? Perhaps we can hear that question much better or much deeper. If that person is here, you can just on your mic and ask. Before I get to, while I'm waiting for that person, let me ask Dr. Abioye. He has a role to, he has his hand up, and he also, I was also going to call upon him to close the workshop. Thank you, Dr. Abioye, up to you.
Wow, what a webinar. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Yeah, I have this question, and before I go into my question, I would just like to tell you that some years ago, when I was still in the university, I had this professor, that time in Nigeria, telecommunication, especially the mobile phones, they are just coming into the country. So this my professor, did not really believe in mobile application, mobile phone, and the rest. In fact, he did not use it that time. He was not using it, and did not even encourage people to use mobile phones. If you were in his class and you have phone, your phone is ringing, then definitely you are in trouble. My question is, I notice now that my prof is now using a mobile phone. He has phone now. He's calling people with his phone and the rest. Now, my question. And this goes to Dr. Desmond. What will be the role of artificial intelligence in research? What will be the role of artificial intelligence in research? Thank you.
Yo, I thought I was off the hook.
Yeah, you mentioned you mentioned GPT the other time. You mentioned it. Yeah.
Yes.
So, and
I brought myself. I'll try to answer you. So the way I see it, technology has made life very, very interesting and much, much easier for us.
So for instance, I think artificial intelligence is actually going to facilitate the process of accessibility to information. Why am I saying this? For instance, I don't know if there is a much better search engine than Google, which is dimensions.ai. And if you take dimensions.ai, it can actually, by you inserting the right keyword, it can basically go ahead and give you what they call a trend analysis. Then also, there is Vox Viewer that can able to help you connect how research trends are going on globally. Then you have things like your Mendeley, your Zotero that helps facilitate the process. So the way I see this is that artificial intelligence will get to a place where it will try to mimic what we do as a human being. But here is the catch. You, the person that is using this tool, you will be able to decide how you want to use this tool in order to be relevant. So for instance, ChatGPT can actually write a thesis for you. It can do a full paper for you. However, your ability to understand the way that thing is put together is what is going to give you the upper hand. Yes, you can use it, and a lot of people I know might use this. There is a website right now. You take an entire research paper, you hold it there, and you give it like 5 minutes. It will basically summarize everything for you. But when you have that summary, do you understand it? There is something that will help you to be able to do all the grammar stuff for you. There is Grammarly, there is Quillplot and all that. But the things, how the human being is that a human being has what it takes to do deductive analysis, inferential analysis, and then being able to come up with something that makes that thing better. Mind you, this ChatGPT that is done was done by a human being. So the idea is that, yes, it's going to make a lot of people lazier, but it's also going to create the avenue where you have access to information. However, when you have too much information, you have cognitive overload. How are you going to build the things around how human beings feel, like your emotions, how you interpret anxiety, and all that in a way that helps you to secure a future? So for me, we cannot do away with artificial intelligence, but however, the human intelligence is what is actually going to make artificial intelligence do its work. That is how I see it. I don't know if I've answered you.
No, thank you so much, Dr. Desmond. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Desmond. Okay, there is a question for Busi here. I wonder if Busi is still here. May I ask Busi what she meant by using an already existing questionnaire? Okay, keep your questions coming, colleagues. And Genosi has his hand up. Thank you. Yes, keep your questions coming.
What is the question, Dr. Tenda?
May I ask Busi what she meant by using an already existing questionnaire?
An already existing questionnaire? Okay.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I'm not sure.
Can
because
I ask,
I didn't use.
can you kindly just maybe ask the question in person? Maybe it will be much clearer.
All right. Hi, Busi.
Hello. What's your question?
So I heard in your presentation that you said, so when you use your own questionnaire that you have designed, you have to go ahead and make it approved. And so I just didn't understand that part.
Oh, okay. No, that was not me. It was Dr. It was the previous speaker. So she was saying that you need a validated, because I designed my own questionnaire and I had to pilot it. So I did not use an existing questionnaire.
All right.
And Busi, can I contribute to that? So
yes.
I thought also the thing around that is that this whole questionnaire things has to go through some ethical clearance. And at that place, they would assess it together with your supervisors and all that to see that what you are doing, the questions you are asking, will help you arrive at an answer that addresses what you are trying to find. So there is that a bit of a lag that actually happens. But the point is that the whole questionnaire has to be designed by you, and then that get assessed together with all the relevant document for you to have your ethical clearance, so that they know that you are doing this research within the boundaries of the ethical considerations, considering that you are going to use an animal or a human being. So that is also something that actually helps. I don't know if that will also help contribute to the confusion.
And then one more thing was that okay, I designed my own questionnaire. So the other thing, I had to pilot it to see if I actually was getting the data or the information that I was looking for. So I piloted my information, my data, my question, and then that also helped me to refine the questionnaire even more. I hope that assists.
Yes, it does.
Assist?
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Dr. Tenza, I wanted to attempt that question on the white perspective and how do you make sure that you actually get. So I think for me, what I've seen is that you can have some sort of screening form at the beginning where you can tell the people that, so be clear that the question is about race. So then you can ask them, which race are you? And then obviously then at the end, then the person is allowed to continue if they meet all the requirements, especially if you're doing an online questionnaire. So if maybe you want somebody between 18 and 25, so if a person is over that age, like you need to clearly state that I need participants between this age group and that age group, and the question is looking at perspectives of white people or whatever, and then the person who's answering already then knows what exactly you're looking for. And when you have the screening form at the beginning, then if a person says they are white, but the thing is that if a person lies and says yes, they are white and they're not white, you really can't check that, but you can have the screening form. But I think being clear at the beginning, saying that I'm doing research, looking at this certain issue, and I need this certain age group, I think that will help you to actually screen and have the relevant people that you are looking for. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Busi. There was a hand, please. There was a hand. Kinosi, was it you? Yes, Kinosi. Go for it. Switch on your mic, Kinosi. Unmute yourself and speak. Kinosi Mokele. Is he here? Kinosi Mokele. Yes. You can ask your question or your comment. We can't hear you, but your mic is unmuted. Inosi? Okay. Inosi Mukele? Any other question, colleagues? Please type your question. I'm talking, but I don't know why you can't hear me. Yeah, can you just type your question, Kinosi, because I really want you to be helped. Type your question. Okay, thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate. I'm just waiting for Kinosi's question, and we'll wrap up. I'm done. I'm really done from my end, and we're just doing the questions and answers. Thank you so much. I appreciate your staying up to this far. I really wish you well, all of you, throughout this year. let's keep engaging and keep your support needs coming through to Tenza Research Hub, and let other people know about Tenza Research Hub portion. And we really, our biggest goal is to make sure that you guys, all the postgrad students journey, it is not as difficult as it could be through our support. And we will definitely be having so much of these webinars. I'm busy planning a webinar on statistical analysis, and you'll be hearing about it very soon. So if anyone are at data analysis phase, you are soon about to be very excited, because the data analysis is the only phase we didn't deal with it a lot today. Your question, Kinosi? I wonder if Kinosi can hear us. Kinosi, please ask on the chat. Okay, let me give a chance to, let me allow our partnering director from Lebengate, Dr. Abioye, to say a word. Both Tenza Research Hub based in SA and Lebengate, which is based in Canada, we collaborated in organizing this webinar. So I would like to just honor Lebengate by allowing my collaborator to say something. Over to you, Dr. Abioye.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tenza, and thank you very much, all the speakers. We really appreciate you. We really appreciate this webinar has been very informative and educative. I want to believe that everybody that joined us, they've gained one or two things, as regards recharge and run, early to start, early to finish. So thank you very much. On behalf of Labingate and research, Dr. Tenza Research Hub, we would like to say thank you once again. Please feel free to help us fill our webinar survey form so that we can harvest your feedbacks and know the next line of action. We really appreciate what your feedback as regards all our webinars. Dr. Tenza, thank you so much. Dr. Desmond, thank you very much. And also, Amina, thank you so much. I think this will be your second or third time of being on Labingate platform to do presentation. And also that goes to Dr. Desmond. Dr. Kelvin, thank you so much. And Dr. Busisiwe, thank you. And my HOD, Ma, thank you so much for being a wonderful presenter. Thank you so much, and God bless you. Bye from my side.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, everyone. See you on LinkedIn. God bless you all.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye. Thank you. See you next time.